is when is Tammuz begin? It's beginning of next week, right? All right, let me, if no one is chiming in about that, let me just look it up
Sunday
quickly.
night.
It is Sunday night, right? Yeah.
Sunday night and it's Monday and Tuesday, so it's Sunday night
Right.
and Monday night.
Monday, okay. And so Sunday night, Monday, it says 2-day Rosh Chodesh. That means technically it's starting, the new month of Tammuz is technically beginning Tuesday. Right, Monday night, Tuesday, correct. So, who's the, so what we're going to do is also cover some stuff about Tammuz, time permitting, and I would really like to cover some of the material on our ongoing series on Chasidim Misnagdim, because we already were so enraptured with other interesting materials and such. And last week, due to the smoke, we didn't go as long as normal. So, let's really try this week to do some of that. Okay. And yeah, so and then also there's another thing, but this is more of like a Lubavitch type of day, interesting day celebration, which is that it is the day. When is it? It's Thursday night. Tomorrow night, I think, is the day that Lubavitch Rebbe arrived in America, which Chasidim didn't really know the exact date until like sometime in the mid '80s, when they started publishing the letters of the previous Rebbe, where he wrote on that on this day my son-in-law came, and within a couple years it became like a whole day interesting of celebration, and the Rebbe himself even recognized it, especially on the 50th anniversary of it in 1991. He even gave out a whole booklet which included a whole historical overview, how the Rebbe was saved, escaped the Nazis in Vichy, France. Very interesting stuff there. And I even, my dear friend from back in the day, well, his yard site was just a few weeks ago, Charlie Ross, would recount to me him remembering the Rebbe coming that day, summer of 1941. He was a yeshiva student just after Bar Mitzvah, studying in 770, and he was there when the Rebbe came out of the car with his luggage, came to 770. And then when it was the 70th commemoration of that's in 2011. I brought Charlie to 770 to the Fabrengen that they were making 770 for that day, and there was one of the only last Chasidim that was also there that saw the Rebbe come in. The only Chassid who's still alive from that era, his name is Label Posner, and I brought Charlie. Label was talking about the event, not only about the bench, but about a story about Charlie's father, who ran he was like a unofficial gabbai in 770 for very first years in the early 40s, and he was talking about it. And that is when Charlie walked in, and they're good old friends from back in the day. And then years later, maybe like 4 years ago, I made a reunion of Charlie and this Abel Posner. I videoed some of it, and they were reminiscing memories from the 1940s. Yeah, so that's the day of Siv. That's the 28th of Sivan, tomorrow night, and you know, it was seen as a night. Like, it's interesting because according there is in Chabad Chassidus, it says, and it's based on Kabbalah. It says that it's interesting saying that Matan Torah Kabbalah, that the giving of the Torah was for the whole world, yes, but it didn't really affect the lower hemisphere of the world. Chatzi kader hatachte, Now in Judaism, the hemispheres are not split along the equator, halfway between north and south, but rather like the top of the globe is east and the bottom of the globe is south. So in relation to the Middle East and Europe, America, the new country, the new world rather, was known as the lower hemisphere of the world. So there was the idea that Mount Torah didn't have a direct effect on the lower hemisphere, and that one of the harbingers of Mashiach's revelation would be when Torah or Jews and Torah becomes more established in the new world, in the lower hemisphere. So even as far as I recollect even when Jews started moving to the New World, let's say even in the 1600s, the year Menashe ben Israel wrote about some of this stuff when the Portuguese Jews went to Brazil and then later made it more north to North America and such. These were all seen as signs of preparing for the world to receive for Mashiach consciousness, and all the more so when the previous Rebbe in the Chabad way of seeing, in their way of disseminating, spreading Chassidus, and when Chasidim in general came to America, and all the more so the previous Rebbe, and then his son-in-law, the latest Lubavitch Rebbe. So this was all seen as all the unfolding of events to bring Mashiach. And the day is also Koach Sivan, the 28th, which is Koach, brings, power, like holy power, down here, down under. Down under is not Australia, but America in this perspective, global perspective. Okay, so there's that too, it is also the day, as we'll see, it is also related. This is interesting. Not always does what we read in the Torah portion related to the actual time on the calendar of the Jewish calendar. Meaning, when we read in the Torah the parsha about Passover, Pesach, which is, or the Jews leaving Egypt, which is Parshas Bo B'Shalach, it's not in Nisan, middle of Nisan, it's in Shvat, 2 months earlier, right? But this year we have a distinctive phenomenon of a convergence of our parsha being coinciding with the actual events of, meaning that the Hebrew calendar coinciding with the actual events of the parsha, and that is the spies, the Miraglim, who went out to scout the land of Canaan, which was to become Israel. That actually began on the 29th day of Sivan, which this year is. Wait, when is the 29th? 29th is Shabbos, I think, right? Let me just double check. I'm almost sure that
29th is Monday. What are you? I'm sorry, Sunday.
Is Sunday. Okay, so it's right after, right? So it's just a day off. So if 29th is Sunday, so I'm sorry, I'm a day off. But I thought today was Chav Zayin. Today's actually Chav Vav, because I mixed day with night, right? So I thought, because tonight is Chav Zayin, but today was Chav Vav, right? So that means the Koach Chav Ches is Shabbos, and Chav Tes is the day right after. So the day that the spies went out to scout the land was actually the day right after we read the parsha about the spies, which also makes sense, because Moshe was probably told the spies to go, to instruct them to go a day before, right? So that would be, and that is how our parsha begins, to scout the land. and to see if it's strong or mighty, or if it's how rich it is, so to speak. And we were just making the connection with Rainbow earlier, also that how like there are the scouts of Rainbow, those that set up the initial camp, and they also go out to national forests to find the right spot if it's good and all that. So this is all the time of it happening. Incidentally, the spies, the Meraglim, it was a 40. They went out for 40 days, and they returned when they basically returned at like also during the fast day of Shiva Sabratamos time, which I suppose was like a year after the whole story of the golden calf. So this and so a year before, these were the days that Moshe was up on Mount Sinai. So these days, I'm sorry. So Sivan, no, I'm sorry. It went till. Wait, I'm confusing here. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The spies went till Tisha B'Av. That's what it is, right? Because that is when the spies returned, and in fact, we have a connection to it because in it says that when the spies returned and they got the supposed nasty report from the spot from the Meraglim that says the people cried, and this was a foreshadowing of the tears of that the Jewish people were weak for the destruction of the two temples on Tisha B'Av that very day, many centuries later. Right? That Eini Yarda Mayim, my eyes, Al Ela Ani Bachia, and he's like cry Eini, the double eye cry for both temples and both eyes, and we hopefully we'll go into that when we speak about Tammuz too. So a theme also of tonight, in addition to what's the whole story with the spies, is also like the phenomenon of vision, of eyesight. Okay, and we'll see how it's all interconnected, both with the story of the Meraglim and also with the month of Tammuz. We were speaking earlier before we went on about vision, the power of vision, to channel certain epiphanies and even to be a channel for healing physically. Yeah. So vision, eyesight is very, very powerful. Fact, right? Think about it. You know what? Let's do it this way. We're gonna mix everything up. Mishmash. Why not? For the upcoming month of Tammuz and the Parsha, why not? Right? Because in fact, the right, of course, spies. If we say I spy, it's just not just the I, capital I spy, as it says, but also EYE spy, right? Spying is being voyeuristic, using eyesight to check things out. Yeah. So and that is what the spies were doing. They were scoping the whole land from length to breadth, as it says in the Parsha. And the thing is that they took things. The issue is with the Meraglim is they didn't just report what they saw; they added to it their own personal commentary, right? Because the question is, what did the spies do wrong, right? Moshe, in fact, tells them to go, and Moshe instructs them to report what they witness, what they see when they go there, and they come back and they report more or less what Moshe instructed. So why were they? What did they? Why were they punished? Why was it such a severe breach of of the intention, divine intention. So a main answer to this is that when we are sent out on a mission to check something out, don't mix in your personal perspective. Be like almost a video camera. You see, come back, just convey the facts. Don't try to add your personal commentary and say what what your impression is of it. There are numerous. Let me just find it in the Chumash, and you'll see what we're talking about. Right. All right. So it's, I think, chapter 13. I'm just going to share on the screen. Right. So, so here's how it, right? They go out by Suru. They spy the land, and they bring back famously the big cluster of grapes, giant grapes, and they say, yes, indeed, this land is flowing with milk and honey, and here the fruit. Fine, but then what does it say? The next verse, Efes ki amazeh. They're not just reporting the size of the people, but they're adding their own commentary that not just that they're giants, but they are strong and that they could and that they're really formidable. And here further in verse 31, they said, we cannot go up, ascend to these people, meaning go up, as the English says here, go up against the people. We can't, because they're stronger than us. No one asked the spies to give their personal analysis. They should have just, as they say, just the facts, man, just the facts, right? Once they started mixing in their own their personal perspective, that was the part. And he goes on, they go on later. He says, this land that we got, it's a land that eats up its inhabitants. Meaning, and Rashi says that they either that people that they die prematurely or quickly, or that there's negative aspects of the land. And all that, and moreover, there's even an additional flaw that they did here in verse 33, when the famous thing they said that we were that they were in our eyes like grasshoppers, right? Good, but then what do they add? And so we were in their eyes. Meaning, they did not just comment, even if they did comment their personal perspective, how they felt vis-a-vis these giants, that they were like grasshoppers. They added, as if they knew what was going on in the heads of the Canaanites, that they perceived us as grasshoppers. So that was even an additional, further extension away from just the facts. And in fact, for that last point wasn't really that true, because when it came to later with Yeshua, which is Haftarah this week, which is the story of the famous story in the beginning of Joshua. Joshua also sent out spies, first through Jericho and all that. And if we have time, we could discuss the difference of these two ways of spying. Yeah, it's funny. I just recently, my Narishkeit, I just recently a couple weeks ago, I came across the movie version of Get Smart, with Steve Carell of like how spies could really flop and in really humorous ways. So what was his name? Max and Agent Agent 99 and
Maxwell Smart, Agent
well
86.
smart, right? 86, right? So you could see
And
how,
I don't think we
but
ever
somehow
got.
in that case, what?
I don't think we ever got 99's name. She was always just
Right.
99.
Right, and they're fighting chaos. And
Right.
and the irony in that case is that they're always, it seems like they're always, initially it seems like they're always really slipping, really flopping, but ironically their flops work to the benefit of theirs, right? To their
Right.
benefit. That's the
Right.
whole device of it.
And their control.
Yeah.
Control versus chaos.
Yeah. Oh, their control. That's right. Indeed. So I've done. And you have to go into the phone booth, right? Okay,
Right.
so
Mel Brooks was involved.
right, he was involved with the initial TV, and I think the film too.
Right, Mel Brooks and Buck Henry.
And Buck Henry.
Really?
And Buck Henry is another crazy guy that's crazy funny. Yeah.
Yeah. So we could, I don't know, I don't know how the Miraglim in our parsha live up to Get Smart version, but at least they thought they were getting smart, Miraglim. And as we'll learn, according to Chassidus, the spies weren't so off in their whole approach, by the way. It was just, in other words, it wasn't just that they were misjudging fully or really crossing the line. As we'll see, actually, ironically, they were seeing things on a higher, loftier spiritual level. So the spies. So what's pshatake? How did this happen? How could it be that if they were reporting the right way, if they were just following Moshe Rabbeinu, and they were still punished? So we just said one is because they were giving their personal commentary, but even so, their personal commentary wasn't. There was truth to it. It wasn't like they were making it totally up. And so, in other words, there's a deeper message that they were giving here.
Missed it by that much.
Oh, is that what he says?
That was one of the things.
One of the lines. Okay.
And loving it.
And loving it.
Vayomeru hamaraglim el Moshe. Sorry about that, Chief.
Chief. Yeah. Sorry
about that. Would you believe that right at this moment, there's 200 control agents that have this place surrounded, and you should just give yourself up? No, I would not believe it. Would you believe 3 Boy Scouts and a toothless dog?
or a phone in your shoe, right? To communicate.
A cell phone before there were any cell phones.
Before any cell phones. Yeah. Yeah.
Is it still subject to the most common appearance of especially during these Zoom calls? It's the cone of silence.
The call of silence?
The cone of silence.
Oh, that thing that would come over at their desk, right?
I.e., you're on mute.
You're on mute, right.
Or we can't hear each other. We misunderstand every word or every other word. And
look. These days,
technology.
There's way more intense stuff like the Israeli Pegasus software, which is being used by governments all over the world, really spying on specific high value targets, as they call it, right? It's a world of if you ever thought of like the omni-ocular, it only meant God, that God, the ayin bochein, the all-seeing eye. Now, unfortunately, it's it's Big Brother's eye in a lot of ways.
Or maybe, fortunately, if they're following certain people, they maybe should be followed.
I hear, yeah, all right. No, I hear, but I'll tell you, certainly it's like in the past, you think of, oh God, like you're being surveilled all the time. It was like more of an abstraction, but now that we have a concrete analogy, more than analogy, real life version thereof. Just be careful. Some people including my computer, I have a thing I could cover like this, just in case they're plugging in, So, anyways, that would have been really interesting if modern technology then, but as we know, even in modern intelligence, and one of the things like for American intelligence, and quite a few times we see that there is the gap, which is having human eyes on the ground, right? And which, I mean, where America is great with technology, but when you need, when you need people with, so that that is irreplaceable until they're exposed. Blah blah blah. Okay, so the spies go out. They go through the land. Now, what is going on? What is this whole concept of spy? So, I mean, there's more parts to this whole narrative and questions. For example, also, what does it say? That God tells it says in the beginning of the parsha. Again, I'll just share with the screen so you get a idea thereof. God says, "Shlach lecha anashim." Yisrael said, "You said send." God said, "Shlach anashim." He's speaking to Moshe. What do you mean, lecha, to you? So, as Rashi says, famous commentary of this verse, that God told Moshe, this whole idea of sending spies is risky business. Really, like, I highly recommend against it. Things could go south. No pun intended, right? Because Canaan was north of them. But if you want to do Moshe, do it on your own. You do it. If you take the responsibility on your own, based on your own das. I am not telling it to you. If you want to, good, right? So, and then the Moshe says, but that too doesn't make sense, because right after that, again, the verse says right afterwards, but that God sent these 12 Miraglim, the spies, and they weren't just bottom of the barrel spies. They were heads of each of their respective tribes. They were really, really, they were top, the top brass, so to speak. And the verse says, "Al pi Hashem." And it was by Hashem's, that Al pi Hashem. It wasn't just Moshe himself. So if it's God telling Moshe, as it says in the beginning, "Veidaber Hashem el Moshe leimar," and it says Al pi Hashem. So what does it mean that Moshe, you do it by yourself? What's going on? Was it all only independently done, or an autonomous mission by Moshe, or was it being directed from the commander in chief, from God? Right? What it's quite it's more than just ambiguous. It's like paradoxical almost, or rather ambivalent, right? So so in other words, if God wanted it to be done, why did he just lay it on Moshe? And if it's all Moshe doing it, why was it being viewed as something that God said? Okay, so we'll the way Chassidus sees this is this is one of those classic Chassidic interpretations that really explains all the layers of the narrative of the parsha, and resolves all the conundrums. And this is also following the theme of this whole book of Bamidbar, which we started a few weeks ago. Remember, we were speaking about what is a desert, and what does it mean to be out of the desert, the pros and cons of it. And here too, we have it. And that is that, and if you recall, we spoke about more than once the last few weeks, that the desert, yes, it could be viewed in a negative way, meaning the place of scorpions and snakes and parched and without any growth. On the other hand, it is also could be perceived as the place of pure spirit, where there is no distractions, there is no temptations of juicy fruit from the tree of knowledge, let's say, or everything that luxuries grow from produce, vegetation. In fact, according to Kabbalah, water, which is almost non-existent in a true desert, is the source of all worldly, earthly delights and pleasures. Right? If you see the first chapter of Tanya, he mentions this. So a place without water means it's like we're beyond the needs of physicality. We're not in an agricultural terrain region. We're in a purely arid place zone, and it's a place where we can really tap into the highest states of spirituality and mysticism. In fact, there is a theory that if you think of it, that the three monotheistic religions are associated with areas of desert, whether it's the Mount Sinai in the Sinai Desert, whether it was JC and wherever in the Judean hills, which is quite deserty, or whether it was the founder of Islam in the Arabian desert. It does something being in this. You could rewatch Lawrence of Arabia to get a sense of like what it's like to be in the desert. I've been more than once in my life to like really very deserty landscapes, and I'll tell you, it's beautiful, and it can also start playing with one's mind, and really feel like you're becoming more transcendent, or more lightheaded, of course. Even the air starts undulating, and you start seeing mirages, and it's quite it's quite an experience. So in Yiddishkeit, the desert can represent a way of life. Living in the desert represents a way of life of only being in touch with the spiritual realm. It's just with Torah and prayer, being on that whole transcendental way, state of being. Whereas going to the lush land means you have to get down to earth, be a farmer, work, and do all the practical things of life. Toil, sweat, dirt, and in fact, so much that was, if you read the Torah, if you read, let's say, the Parsha Bahar, right, or other ones, Kisavaya La'aretz, and many others, it's all about that when you come to the land that I will give you, which is Israel, Canaan, Israel. What's the first thing you got to do? You got to toil for 6 years, and only the 7th year you got to shmit the break, and you have to be very involved in very technical stuff with different types of tithing, of truma, meiser, and how to toil, and then animals, how to tithe them, and bringing sacrifices, and doing business, and all the petty details of mundane living. that is represented by going to the land of Canaan, to Israel. Yes, it's a holy land. It's a holy land, but it's still a land that takes a lot of the physical, primarily physical labor. So that was the let's even quote resistance of the spies when they went and they checked out the land. They're going from this total spiritual zone, the desert, and they go to Canaan, and they see not only is it so fertile, but it's super fertile with big, massive, like Guinness Book World Record size grapes and pumpkins and whatever. And even the people are really zaftig, it represents that they really have a good, healthy diet. And at the same time, it's a land that eats up its inhabitants. It's not easy to live there, and they're gonna have to work hard. So they said, what do we need this whole? This is going to deter us from our spiritual way. We are here in the desert. Here in the desert, we have the manna coming from heaven. We have the well of Miriam just providing us with the best filtered water. Even our clothes are magically cleaned on us and grow with us. We have this comfortable clouds below our feet. We have the best shade with the cloud on over us, and like this is spiritual bliss. So what the spies were doing was they were not just reporting what the facts, what they saw, but they were even making a certain argument. If to serve the Almighty and to be in the Torah, if Torah is about being sublime and to reach high spiritual states, then how can we go to this land? It contradicts the way of spiritual life, right? This is something that will take us away from the Torah path. So they were almost warning the people that we got to do something about this. Maybe we should stay here forever. I don't know why my one-track mind is now thinking this is maybe the difference. Okay, let me finish the Vart, and I'll just add my personal thing. Okay, so what's the answer to this? The answer is, as we know, that and as the theme is also we mentioned the last couple of weeks, which is yes, to be spiritual, there is there is that idea of keeping away from physical temptations, blah blah blah, and physical, the crassness of the mundane life. However, that is not the ultimate aim of Torah. The ultimate aim is to be within the physicality and to transform the physicality into the spiritual, to reveal that even the physical, even someone's, very practical business, or being a contractor, or being or being living off the fat of the land, as in what's that John Steinbeck book, Grapes of Wrath, right? Yeah, that is the way. That is the true way of Torah. Torah, in fact, and that is in a way that how Judaism is in a way distinguishes itself from other religions. That Judaism's emphasis is not that the more you leave the physicality, the more spiritual you become, but rather to integrate the spiritual with the physical, and moreover, that the true spiritual is achieved through the physical, which is why you see Jews are as spiritual as we are, and we have fast days, but it's not, we're not overwhelmed. It's just 6 days a year, and even then, only 2 of them are 24 hours. So we're into our food. Ask any Jew, right? We're not shying away from that. However, our food is to be sacred, be blessed with a blessing, especially on Shabbos. We elevate it to the most sacred ways. And in many other ways, you'll see in Yiddishkeit, the whole Shulchan Aruch, code of Jewish law and halacha, is predicated on this, of how to interact with the physical world and use that as a vehicle to serve the Creator. So you want to go, you want to become truly spiritual. You don't need to lock yourself up in an ashram, but rather be in this world and spiritualize it to its fullest. So that was the, if you want to call it error, so to speak, of the spies, that their perception that there is this dichotomy or opposition of spiritual and physical, rather than realizing that there's something greater even than spiritual and physical, and that is godliness, divine, the divinity. And divinity does not distinguish. The world thinks that the divine is more expressed in the spiritual than the physical. The spiritual is an abstraction. It's something that transcends it. It's more related to the infinite. God is infinite. So you speak to anyone, oh, that's divine, or that's a godly experience. They right away think of something, on some outer body state, But in truth, especially from God's POV, spiritual and physical are co-equal extension of the essence of the divine. This is something that's explored in Kabbalah and emphasized in Chassidus. I would go a step further, that if you read Chassidus, and in a way, in Chassidus is more emphasized in Kabbalah, and that is not only is spiritual and physical co-equal extensions of the divine, but in fact, the divine is more expressed in the physical than even in the spiritual. Because ultimately, the mitzvot and the ways to live the Torah life is, as we said, is in the physical world, like the famous response of Moshe to the angels, which we mentioned a few weeks ago before Shavuot. Like the angels said, don't give the Torah to mortal beings, and Moshe said, yeah, well, read the 10 Commandments. Do you have parents, physical flesh and blood parents? No. Are you ever tempted with ideas of stealing possessions or coveting your friend's spouse and blah blah blah? These are all physical and earth-based predicated injunctions. Obviously the Torah was written for a physical world. So in fact, it's stafka through the physical world that we reach as a Shwartan Chassidus to the essence of God. Moreover, as it's brought down in Chabad theology, if you want to call it, that it is dafka, the physical world, specifically the physical world, that has a unique characteristic that only the essence of God has. And that is the concept of mitziusai me'atzmusai, that one's existence is of oneself, meaning that one does not have it's not connected directly or dependent for one's existence on some cause or some predecessor. Yes, we're born from parents, but once we come out, especially once we grow up, we don't need our parents day and night. We breathe and live, our bodies exist without our parents. So in a way, humans walking around, objectively could think, oh, I'm an autonomous being, right? It's not obvious that we're told. It takes faith, it takes insight, the spirit, conscious, a certain type of consciousness to be aware that we're directly just an extension of the divine. But normal people, people without that consciousness, or let's say an animal or whatever, thinks I exist. This is me. I'm the beginning of the end of my whole beingness. So there is nothing else in the whole cosmos, the whole extension, of how the world came from all the spiritual levels of all the worlds of Asiya, Yetzirah, Bria, Tzilut, all the way up to Daisy, all of the whole lineup, all the way to Adam Kadmon, as we spoke about a couple of weeks ago. Nothing has this similar quality of perceiving itself as being the beginning and end of one's own autonomous existence through and through, other than God's essence. Everything else, even the Ein Sof, infinite light, to the contrary, it feels that it is connected to the essence of God and all the way down. Humans are or physical sentient beings are the only ones that can that feel like that. Now, of course, the truth is also all connected to that. But even this feeling, even this misperception and feeling that we are autonomous beings is in itself endowed upon us from the very essence of God. So in a way, we are carrying a certain quality that nothing on the spiritual realms possess. So there's a certain uniqueness that we have, even, and that is in addition to the Kabbalistic concept principle that whatever is lower in the hierarchy of unfolding of existence, the evolution from the essence of God, whatever is lower down the line, its source it comes from a higher source. The fact that we're at the bottom of the line, ipso facto, means that we are connected even higher than all the spiritual realms. Again, that is why the true intention and fulfilling the purpose, and the will of the one above is precisely down here, and not even just being down here, or meditating or feeling, but precisely being involved with physicality, physical objects, giving charity physically, lighting Shabbos candles physically, putting on tefillin physically, etc., etc., etc. This is what we mean in the New Age or renewal way. They would call it embodied Judaism, but we could call it physicalized Judaism, which is related, meaning manifesting fully down here. That we don't need to escape our physical reality to reach God, but rather through our sacred involvement with the physical, we draw this God into the physical, or reveal certain God into the physical. So now the truth is, there is a valid way practice for certain people, elitists, let's call them, what we call in the literature tzaddikim, the righteous, that their way is to spiritualize, or like we read a couple parshas ago, the Nazir, right? There were certain special people also, even back in a couple centuries ago in the Pale Settlement, known as Perushim, people who separated themselves from physical day-to-day life and just spent their lives in the study halls or the synagogues, praying and studying, fasting, and all that. But this is not this is not the ultimate way to be, right? So we see examples of this, of those that had this more, more distant relationship with the world approach. For example, Noach, right? Noach was known as a tzaddik, Noach ish tzaddik. It has a song goes, Noach was a big tzaddik. Noach was a big tzaddik. From his Kepelech to his Kiselech, Noach was a big tzaddik. So what does it mean? Noach was a big tzaddik. Yes, he was very righteous, especially for his generation. And however, and maybe related to it is the fact that he didn't even really go out to try to missionize and change his generation to become better. He just stayed holy in his holy bubble, built his ark, and if people came by, he explained to them, yeah, there's going to be a flood, and that better, shape up so you don't get it, so this flood doesn't come. But he didn't start making a vayizak, start running around like a Lubavitcher, like Rabbi Kunin of California or something, or a Breslover. We got it, trying to convince everyone to change. No, he let those that are doing, let the Rishayim, whatever, let them be. Who was better, somewhat better, was Abraham. Abraham did go out. It says Vayikra, he did transform. He spread monotheism and did convert people to the new faith and so on. But even Abraham wasn't 100% perfect, in fact. Like the story of Sodom. What happened with the story of Sodom? He wants to save the cities, and he goes through the whole line, 100 or 50 or even 10. What is it? 50, 10, 20, even 10? Or 10 what? 250 what? Tzaddikim. He was praying for that. If we could find 10 righteous, then we could save stuff. But once God says, no, I'm sorry, there aren't even 10. Did Abraham try to still convince God? No. He said, okay. Right. Moshe was the ideal one. Moshe was the one who went, no. Moshe was the one who went, no. When the people worshipped the ego, the golden calf, he wouldn't give up. And he said, even wipe me out of the book. Meaning Moshe was even stretching out, stretching out on a limb for even the non-tzaddikim. Yeah, Avram was just looking for a minion. Very good question. Very good point. Yeah, I'm seeing Jonathan's comment. I hear you. Well, twofold. First of all, okay, you're saying maybe you can't have Rishayim that's part of a minion. There is a certain halachic idea that if someone desecrates Shabbos in the public, then you cannot be part of a minion. I hear that. But by the way, that's another issue here, and another. He was looking for fellow tzaddikim, right? His shul was anshe tzaddikim, right? Not anshe bein Rishayim or even bein. I hear you. But what you're bringing up, Jonathan, is another valid point, which I didn't mention yet, and thanks for reminding me. And that is another very interesting phenomenon. That if you look, the whole idea of having a minyan, of course, where's the proof text for it? It's from our parsha with the Meragulim. Let me see if I can find the verse. I think it's brought down in Gemara, I think. That there's the term ha'eda hazais. Where is it? But it says kol ha'eda one place, but I think it says ha'eda hazais on the 10 on the spies. And as we know, of the 12, 10 were the ones who flopped, right? Kalev and Joshua did not give it. So they learned from this that idea of the Ada to have a minion from the Meragulim. So the question is this the place you're going to bring a proof of making a holy minion? Is from the spies who messed up, from the negative experience of the spies, or people these spies actually eventually came to their premature death through a divinely inflicted plague right thereafter. So you're going to use them as the example for what a minion is? Like, what's going on here? right? So this is well, it's related to this too, and because again, the spies were not really saying something that was so outlandish, so oppositional to. It wasn't like even their sin wasn't a fully wholesome sin the way we would perceive it. It was just another perspective, a partially truthful perspective, that there is a place for certain individuals to be to live a purely spiritual realm. And in fact, back in the day, even the Mishnah speaks about that there were congregations that would support what is known as a Sarah Batlanim. 10, not what now we Batlan, it has a pejorative connotation. Those that are just leidigayers, we say in Yiddish. Those that are, unemployed, have nothing to do with the whole day. They just hang out and shul day and night. By the way, there's a lot of Batlanim these days in that way. God bless the Haredi Hasidic community these days. And there are people with great financial means, and there are shuls like Shiner Shul in Muncie, and I have a friend in Monroe and other places that you could go. Honestly, if you know what right shul to go to, you could go there and you don't have to leave. There's big libraries, and they'll feed you. They'll give you coffee. Not only coffee and cookies and coffees is upgraded. It's a certain. I was recently at a friend's shul in Monroe. I walked in. I said, "Is this a shul or a catering hall?" It's a massive. They just give out food. I think that you have a free mikvah. The only thing they don't have is actual beds to do it. I think there are places you could even crash. They'll hook you up with beds, and I'm telling you.
I've seen them giving out soup at Shiners.
Yeah, Shiners, they have right. In addition, because they have soup. That's true. They have the soup over there. That's true. I'm saying I've seen like home meals being given out, like Gewalt.
That much I haven't seen, but yeah.
And then you have all right. So but then there's a more noble way of Batlanim, which are those that are like similar to like the Kolo, members of a Kolo, which they're actually supported to sit and learn and study day and night, and even get a stipend and blah blah blah. So there is a place of those that to have people that are separate. Like, of course, yeshiva students are a prime example of that. That to be and they're encouraged to be totally cut off from the world, not to have anything to do with business or physicality. And in fact, they're right, and they're not supposed to, because the whole point is that they're supposed to prepare themselves there to be an extreme separation from the world. So when they do go out into the world, they're not fully absorbed, right? They're already there was a metaphor, two metaphors. One, the fifth Lubavitcher Rebbe Rashab said that like, in order to keep, so the way old times they would heat up like an oven, is you first have to put in the wood and coals and burn it up to like very high temperature, like to 800, and then you push the coals and the wood to the side, and then to keep it maintained, then it comes down to an equilibrium, like a 450 or something, right, constant. But you have to first, in order to get there, to keep it lasting, you need to build up the fire more. So too, yeshiva students are cut off from the world. That's what they have to be built up. The other metaphor is from a Chabad mashpia. His name was Zalman Havlin. He said that there's two types of fish in the sea or a lake, or let's say a lake, better. They're the sea the fish are deep in the water, and the fish are higher, more near the surface. So when the lake starts drying up, the fish that are higher, that are near the surface, that poke their heads out in the water, they're the ones that are going to be dried up and wind up on the lake bed without any water. But those that stay deeply submerged, deep water, they're the ones that are going to survive. Right, so there's something to be said to be totally cut off in the world, but this is only for a certain period of our lives. but not for everyone. To use a non-Jewish metaphor, for those that like who've been to the Far East know this. You go to certain countries like Thailand or
Tibet, you're thinking?
Well, yeah, Tibet too. There's another country I'm thinking. There's several countries where the men from a young age wear saffron robes and take on certain vows, right? Not to work, only to focus, practice. But it's only like a year or two practice for most people, and then in certain individuals, a small minority, if they have the true real calling, it would become a lifetime vocation, and they would stay in the ashram in their ashrams, what have you. So again, there is a place for some, but not for everyone. So this is also the difference between Shammai and Hillel. Shammai was someone who couldn't deal with the real, actually, he represented Gevura, severity, and not being that immersed in the world. And that's why he had issues with the convert who was making issues. Everything was like very precisely measured, keeping away. That's why he was also more stringent halachically than Hillel, because Hillel represented shining, being involved in the world, spreading the light in even the darkest parts. Behila Neira, they say his name comes from one who gives out light. That's why he was so involved in obviously Israel, right? And all that. So we see that there are two archetypes of how to live, being even part of the world or separate from the world. But the ideal is to be the type of tzaddik who is in the world, all right? Not the tzaddik that is separate from the world, tzaddik in the world, okay? And that's the point. And that's why the spies didn't reach the ultimate level. Who was the one who actually was able to reach that ultimate level? That was Yeshua, Joshua. And right, Joshua was to be the successor of Moshe, and he was empowered to even be part of the world, which is in fact explains another question. If Moshe, it says that Joshua's name was first Hosea, was changed to Yehoshua, like to emphasize the prayer, like Rashi says that Moshe prayed for Joshua that he should be saved. God should save him from the ploy of the spies. So the question is, if Moshe Rabbeinu chose these great charismatic people, which were just great spiritual heights, so right, this is first of all we just said answer the question, like if he trusts them so much and to do that, why how could they have messed up? So we answered, right, they didn't really mess up. They were just bringing their high tzaddik perspective, thinking that that's the way, and that way could be the way that everyone, including the common people, everyone in of the whole nation of Israel could live the tzaddik lifestyle, and as we just explained, that is not the way for the supermajority. And this also explains why Moshe prayed only for Yeshua, because all the other spies weren't meant to become leaders of the people, so to speak, right? They were to remain a leader. It's like we said, that's about London. They'll be the great, ascetic representatives of their tribes, but not to be. But a true leader is the one that has to roll up his or her sleeves and even get his hands dirty to help the people, and to really, really get involved. And therefore Moshe prayed specifically for Yeshua, because he was the one who was to continue in this way of being involved, even with the physicality, mundaneness of the people. In fact, this also explains the evolution, like thematically, like how our parsha follows from last week's parsha and is like builds up even Moshe's perspective. Because if you remember last week, we were saying Moshe had issues, ma'ayin li basar. He couldn't relate to the people's being so preoccupied and needing so much meat and real bread and all this stuff. It was like, because in last week's parsha, Moshe didn't really fully reach that level to totally relate to the people on their level, their needs. And even if it seemed to him as pathetic, right, or antithetical to a spiritual life. But after the lesson of last week's parsha, Moshe now had more of that awareness of how to that to be the ideal leader of the people, one has to be act on those two. You have to work both ways. It's the XY axis to be both the head, like we spoke about 2 weeks ago, Nasa Rosh, but also to be like last week's parsha, Balotcha, to elevate the people. That means to be on their terms, and that is the best of righteous leaders. That could be both simultaneously. Speaking of Joshua, this explains also the difference of the odyssey of the spies of our parsha and of Joshua, and right. So in the book of Joshua sends out right where they're crossing into finally making it to the promised land, and he sends out spies to go to Jericho. Right, and through Jericho they check out and they come back with a report. And actually, they find out that the people are scared, that the people in Canaan and Jericho are actually afraid of the Jewish people, because they heard the stories of how the Israelites, conquered, beat up and even conquered Amalekites and other nations, Ammon and Moab and all that. So they were already a people. That without the confidence, which is why it was easier for them to conquer it. Whereas the spies in Joshua's story of the spies, they were good spies and they were successful. Apparently, it seems like they were doing the right thing. Whereas in our parsha, the whole narrative is that they flopped. Not only that, they went against the divine intention. So what gives? So it's connected to what we're saying. So it's explained in Chassidus the following: that the seven, that Canaan, as we know, had 7 nations, right? The Shiva Amamin of Canaan. The 7 nations of Canaan represent the 7 midot, attributes. Chesed, Gvura, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yisrael, Malchut, of the other side, right? Of Klippa, of the other side, right? And it says when Mashiach comes, there will also be the 3 nations of Keni, Knizi, Kadmoni, which represent the mind, the Seichel, Chachma, Bin Adas. So basically, what we're talking about here is the very innate attributes of the human existence and personality, the midos, as we call it, emotional, behavioral, even intellectual. However, that there's an outer layer to that, and this is explained at length in Tanya by the Shnei Zalman Adi, the founder of Chabad, and that is the 3, what is known as the 3 garments to the soul. So again, the soul itself is made up of the mind, by Seichel and Midas, the mind and the emotional behavioral attributes. And those are also represented, that's aligned with the 10 Sefirot, particularly the 7 Sefirot. But then, like an outer shell to that, the garment, so to speak, to our soul is known, which is the garments of the soul. I mean, those are three, three attributes, and that is machshava, dibur, and ma'aseh, thought, speech, and action. So, so all humans, our main experience of input, output of sensory data and blah, 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 the way we experience our lives is always filtered from our seichel midas, from our soul patterns of those 10 attributes through the garments of thought, speech, and action. Thought is the way the things are still internally. Speech is the medium, the intermediary from internal to external. It's still not tactile yet. And then action is out in the physical world. So that is the conduit of how we experience life, right? I think that you could even use a computer analogy to it, like, right? There's the CPU, and then there's the RAM, right? There's stuff stored in the inner hard drive of the computer, and then how do we interface with it? Is it called the RAM? I think, right? Something like that. So, right? Like if we don't think about things, does that mean the ideas in our mind are not in our heads? No, still there, but we're just not aware of it, right? But when do we have the experience of awareness of an idea that we carry in our heads? Or let's say we give an example. You have a memory stored in the brain. You're not always remembering it, but when you do remember it, now I'm experiencing the memory thereof, right? And I'm thinking about it. So now I have access. Now it's in my consciousness, not in my subconscious, right? Subconscious would be more of the seichel itself, of the soul itself. So bringing those aspects to the surface, right? So basically, going back to what we were speaking about before, about interacting with the world, and that being the telos and the emphasis. Good Shabbos, Aaron. Yes, you too. Thank you. I suppose you're more in the Cinderella's time these days, midnight. Even although I think by you it's like an hour earlier, but totally understood. We're going to go on some more, as long as Chaver are engaged enough. Okay, so the way we interact with the world is through thought, speech, and machshavim. So that basically is our main say vessel or conduit experience of life. Okay. So now Kabbalah, so Chassidus particularly explains that Jericho, the word Yerichai, which in Hebrew is the word Yerichai. Rachel's coming out. So Yerichai is related to the word of Reach, smell. Right? Welcome, Rachel. Great. I spoke early on before we came onto Facebook. I shared a bit about Sababa and how amazing it was. It's great. Yeah, it was amazing. So maybe later if we have time, we'll go back to that. So now Miller's talking about the parsha and other interesting ideas related to how to live a down-to-earth life. So Yericha, Jericho means reach. That's the word reach, smell. Now, smell is an interesting thing. Smell is ephemeral. It doesn't really have substance to it. It's just out there. And then it goes in our nostrils and we smell it, right? So, in fact, the Zohar says that smell is like a garment because it's on the outside That's not really something that we hold, right? It's something sort of so ethereal that it's like just something just on the outright. In fact, the Zohar has more than one description of how, for example, of how great the Yenuka. Yenuka is this great, fantastic character of the Zohar, this child who is more wise than all the great sages of the Zohar. So at one point he goes around, he wants to check out who's wise, who's this or that. He smells their garments and he says, I know who you are. I know what you're about. So there's something about the garments and smell, right? Also, if you remember, Jericho was the city that was fortified and was surrounded by a great wall with Jericho with the trumpets, which Joshua with the trumpets brought down. So this idea of an outer layer is what Jericho represents. So again, going back to the human experience, our outer layer being those three faculties of machshava, dibur, and ma'isa, thought, speech, and action. That is the garments of our soul. That's not the soul itself. And that again is represented by Jericho. So these two narratives of spies is basically saying, what can we work with? Can we transform the soul itself, the seichel and midas, the mind and the 10 attributes of the soul itself, which is represented by the 7 Canaanite, the whole land of 7 Canaanites, or no? Really, all we can really, or at least for a starting point, all we can really just transform are the garments of the soul, the three faculties, to speak, which is represented by the narrative of the spies of Jericho, of Joshua to Jericho. So based on what we were saying, that the real aim is to deal with it, to be in the world, and not what. And this is also connected in fact with Tanya, that the prototypes, if the tzaddik is the one, like we were saying before, of Moses's spies, the ones who are the tzaddikim who are detached from the world, or just purely on a spiritual realm. And Tanya speaks about that the average, the majority of us, the average person is known as a Beinani. Beinani means an average or intermediary person between the righteous and the wicked, quote unquote. But basically, and that is in fact the main idea of the first part of Tanya. I mean, the first composition of Tanya. Tanya is made up of 4 compositions, unrelated compositions. But the main one of Tanya, which is 53 chapters, the whole point is that try to be the best average person. That's why Tanya is also, it has another title, Sefer Shel Beinani, the book of the average person, the Beinani. And the whole point of Tanya is, don't try to transform your soul itself, the inner mind and emotional and behavioral attitude. But yes, do change and control and then transform the outer the garments, the thought, speech, and action. Okay? So again, the spies of Joshua to Jericho represent the work of the Beinani, which is the work of most of us and being involved in the world. And that's why they were successful. Whereas the spies of Moshe, being that they were saying no to do the work of a tzaddik, yes, for tzaddikim, that is the way to be, but that is not for the majority of us. And that's why maybe it would work for them, but it was certainly not something that was for the people. So in fact, if the spies would have just kept their perspective to themselves, they would have just reported what they saw without giving their judgment of it. That, and therefore we can't succeed, blah, 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 giving all the negative perspective of why can't do it and why we should stay in the desert and be just total ascetics. No, No, that's that. So them trying to say everyone could be a tzaddik, that was their boo-boo. Okay? That's why they didn't succeed. Um, and as we said, was it from God or from Moshe? So that's the point. God was, in fact, if anyone's feeling that the internet is unstable now, let me know, because I just saw a little indication thereof. Let me know, and I can make it better. Does everyone have good reception still? Yes, no?
Yeah. We're good.
Okay, good. Thank you, man. So basically,
I'm going to just point out your audio began to fluctuate for a moment, but now it's good.
Okay, good. If it happens again, let me know, and I could enhance
Shall
it.
do.
Okay, so maybe the Zoom sometimes wants to be a tzaddik and detach itself from doesn't want to be manifest by it. What again?
Rivka, your audio is not good.
Yeah, I don't know if Rivka sometimes has phone from her end. I don't know if it's from me.
It's internet problem.
Oh yeah. And now I hear you better. Okay, good. Okay, continue. So was it from God or from Moshe? So the answer is, in a way, from both. Like Moshe's point was, yes, he started to be more. Moshe was still trying to say maybe the people could reach a level, because what's the whole point of a leader is try to uplift the people, to make them greater, like we were saying a couple weeks ago. So Moshe was still attempting, and maybe there's a way we could have everyone reach a level of tzaddik, right? In fact, we're all endowed with being innately in us to be a tzaddik. This famous verse, in the beginning Mishnah Avot, right? We're all tzaddikim. Tanya also says that we're sworn, our souls are sworn when we come down into this earth to be a tzaddik. So on some level, maybe we could. Why not? Why not reach for the highest? Right? But God really knew that yes, the ideal is to try to be a tzaddik, but it's almost set up that almost no one will become a tzaddik. In fact, the Alter Rebbe in Tanya is very extreme at this. You know, the level of a Beinoni, being the best of a Beinoni in Tanya is probably a higher level than most Musar or Hasidic writings describe what a tzaddik is. To be the ideal Beinoni, according to Tanya, sounds like a tzaddik, like the highest tzaddik already. That means to have thought, speech, and action in your full control, 24/7, only thinking of God and the divine. Everything you do and act is all just for the Creator. So that, most people will say that is a tzaddik. But the Alter Rebbe says right away in chapter 1, no, that is just a coined phrase of Shem HaMushal, says of tzaddik. A real tzaddik is not just someone whose garments are in control or even transformed, but where even the innate part of the soul itself, those 10 attributes, Seichel and Midas themselves are. Either the negative aspects are either eradicated, they're killed out, or it's totally gotten rid of, like King David, totally, or transformed, whatever way you want to see it. And really, on the outside, there is no real way to tell the difference from the perfect Beinoni, let's call it, and the tzaddik, because they're both doing everything seems like the same. But still, the main difference is, you know what it is? You know where it is? Also the effort put in, because like the tzaddik, doing all this comes automatically. The avoda, the work of it, it's not that the tzaddik doesn't have any work. Tzaddik, meaning what the Beinoni has to work hard for, the tzaddik already does instinctually, naturally. And then on top of that, the tzaddik does even greater work. For example, what we were saying, to get either in higher spiritual levels, like the great ascetics, or even greater than that, to be down in earth and be in the highest spiritual ways, which is something that particularly like Rebbes were excelled at. And as we spoke about, I think in the past also, that the greatness of the Rebbe is not how holy and great, how many times they could fast and endless things, but that the tzaddik, that the Rebbe could be at that greatest level of holiness, yet deal with people and with their down to earth troubles, or giving out tzedakah even to children, or giving up time to do holy work to help another person in the most mundane way. In fact, the first Hasidic discourse of Lubavitch Rebbe, he goes through each of his predecessors, how their greatness of being a Rebbe was not the great lofty learning or prayers and etc., but how they physically helped this person, that person, that person. There's even the story that the founder, Alter Rebbe, founder Chabad, found out that there's some children, orphans that were hungry on Yom Kippur. And he left synagogue, dropped his talis on Yom Kippur, and he went to the outskirts of the town of the Ashna, I think it was, and he went and he cooked a soup on Yom Kippur for the starving children, and so many other stories like that. So that is the real test of the true ultimate, not just tzaddik or rebbe too, which is in a way in this way a depiction. Rebbe is even greater than just stam tzaddik. Even in Tanya speaks about it tzaddik v'rale, tzaddik v'toiv, like different levels of tzaddik. Okay, this is all deeper stuff. The point is that for the supermajority of us to be we are dealing with the garments, and that's the Dafka Yeshua way. Whereas the spies were still on that level they were too holy to deal with the world. If that is the story, so back to our question. If so, why are we learning minyan from the whole idea of minyan from the spots? Moreover, what was the punishment from this whole story of the spies? The whole punishment of the people was, right, the spies themselves were eradicated through a plague. The whole punishment is that we have to stay 40 years in the desert. It seems like almost contradictory. If the whole lesson of the whole story of the spies is that you're not supposed to be in a desert, you're supposed to be involved in the world, and if not for this, they would have gone straight into the Holy Land. So why? It's counterintuitive. Why was therefore, right? The punishment is supposed to be a lesson, a teaching. So why are they told no, let's stay in the desert? So the answer is another level to this, and that is that yes, the whole purpose is to be involved in the world, but in order to be involved in the world in the right way, we have to first establish ourselves in a desert way, in a more spiritual way. If you're just going to jump straight into, you wake up in the morning, I'm going to go straight to work and just be involved. So your whole mind and everything's going to be all just business, the physical world. However, if like it says in Gemara and even Halacha, first thing is you wake up and you daven. Good Nacht, Mendy. Yes, thank you. We'll talk later, indeed. If you set up, you daven, and you do, and then you learn. First thing you're supposed to daven, you're supposed to go to learn, and all that. Then you set up your day. You're beginning with the spiritual foundation for the day, and then the rest of the day, as he says in chapter 30 of Tanya, even when you're going in the marketplace and here and there, you won't be influenced by your surroundings fully. You'll just in the other way, you'll be an influencer onto the physical. You won't be influenced by it. So again, there is a place for us to be tzaddik part of the day, meaning the beginning of the day, setting ourselves up, right? In that way. So too, yes, before the people had to go into the land of Israel, they still needed to spend some time. Right? They were going to be spending hundreds and hundreds of years in Israel. So before that, 40 years, they're designated to get in touch. Like we were saying before, lahavdil, those that go into take on certain vows in their youth, or yeshiva students early on in their life, they're in a holy realm, and then later they can go out into the world with that right prerequisite, that spiritual prerequisite, and then they take it up. So that's why the 40 years still continue, and that's why also we learn minyan dafka from this aim. From them, because the whole idea of minyan and davening is to be in a state of spiritual, like the spies. And so once we're like that, then we could take it out into the real world. This is and this too is why this is a lesson for us, that to have a healthy interaction with the physical world. Just to be right through again the garments that we spoke about, and then ultimately, yes, to try to aim to be at tzaddik, even though we don't can ultimately achieve it. That actually, the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that if you do work on the garments, thought, speech, and action well, and you do perfect them, it could be that it says maybe God will gift from above that you could become a bit of a tzaddik, but don't expect to do it. It reminds me, I heard this, I think, from Rabbi Simon Jacobson, that someone asked him that the Tanya has high standards. Like not only can you not reach a tzaddik, even to be a perfect Beinoni seems almost impossible. So why is Alter Rebbe writing that? Why does he write something that's more possible, like more within the reach realms of what most people do achieve? So he answered with I would say cute metaphor of like a car, like a Ferrari, let's say, right? So you drive a car. You're allowed to drive a car. Let's say most highways to 65, maybe go out west 75, maybe even 80 miles per hour, right? But you're never going to go like more than that, really. Maybe not, right? Maybe you want to speed, you go 90, I don't know. But if you look at speedometers, many cars, especially fancy hotter cars, they'll show you like go up to 180 miles an hour. Like, what's going on here? You're never going to drive 180 miles an hour. What is it showing it to you? No, but it wants to show you what the car is capable of, right? Right. Maybe Taka won't be able to, but no, you could really, really do that if you really, really had to. So just know, all of us, maybe we actually practically don't ever achieve not only a tzaddik, but even the top level of the Beinoni. But no, we still are empowered to do that. And that's why we're Taka sworn from above to be a tzaddik. And Taka, we are all tzaddikim on some level. In fact, Lubavitcher Rebbe said in 1991, in the talk, that in the days before Mashiach, which he saw like these times, is that everyone can reach the level of tzaddik already. Okay, in a revealed form. The fact that we're all tzaddikim of the soul, on the soul level, that's also another point. Of course, as it says, we all are tzaddik, but the difference is that the real tzaddik, let's call it, is the one it's revealed. It's not just dormant. It's not just potential. Even to be revealed, we can do that. We can, be chant in the right level. So bless us all to get to this level of tzaddik, I'm just throwing a few more points in the parsha that plug in with this. So, other things that are going on in the parsha that also relate to this idea. For example, our parsha also has the mitzvah of challah, to separate part of our dough, the dough, for hafrashas challah, which is one of the three mitzvot associated with women. Like the word or name challah, chana is challah, to take a challah. Nun is the candles, nerot for Shabbat, and hey, no, I'm sorry, nun is nida, right, menstrual cycle, and hey is hadlakat nera, lighting Shabbos candles. So challah is actually the first. And challah too is the idea, it's not to give all your dough to the divine, but take off the rashis first. I mean, the top, from the top, even the choicest, the top, the head means the choicest part of the physical. Give it over, transform it, but don't give it all away, make it to God. No, you've got to work with the physical, knead the dough, the physical dough, you be involved. In fact, dough and making bread is physically labor intensive, like even being a farmer is, like it says in Gemara in many places. Like, I have a brother-in-law who runs a top sourdough bakery, and I see how labor intensive it is. Man, he's working hours. He has no sleep. He's up. He's hours and days and hours and work physically and time. Not easy to make good dough bread, especially sourdough bread. So that too shows how we're supposed to work hard in the physical world. And in fact, the other lesson is similar to the lesson of a farmer, that of a faith, because one would think that if you're working so hard on something, then you earn it, deserve it. It's all the labor of your own hands, right? It takes, in other words, it takes more faith to believe and feel that what you're doing is all, that whatever blessings come through the work is just from God, from the divine. Right? If someone doesn't work hard and things get, if someone wins the jackpot, oh yeah, God sent it my way, gifted. Or even if it's easy work, okay, counts. But if someone's working so hard, they invest in it, you think, oh, it's my skills, my labor that made this happen. So in a way, it takes more emunah to believe that it's all coming from above that way. So that too is a lesson from there. What else do we have in the parsha? We have in the parsha at the very end about tzitzis, where tzitzis is also has to remind us of that tzitzis is also a garment. Not only tzitzis, we even have a talus, which is even more of an outer garment, showing us that even, again, like the thought, speech, and action are garments. They're the souls, and even to our bodies, there's garments that are to be elevated to the divine and to remind us of all the mitzvot, as we know the strings and the knots are represent, like the word tzitzis is about 600, as Rashi says, and then 8 strings plus 5 knots is 13, makes 613, and all different other ways that mitzvot remind us to be aligned with above, right? The fact that it's blue, the tchelet blue string that's of the sky above, so too that we look at the mitzvot and it reminds us it's coming to Hashem, right? And many other aspects related to tzitzis signify this fact that it's also to remind us of the Exodus, which is something which was supernatural, miraculous. So again, it is about how we take our physical world. The tzitzis is also Africa in our physical world. It's one of the prime examples of something, a physical mitzvah, and to permeate it and reveal the divine through it. And what else is in the parsha that's related to this? Also about the what is known as the libations for the offerings. This is also how do we integrate or the offerings, the korbanot themselves, how this is all connected to to be in the physical world. Also, related to the theme that we were saying, that the midbar that represents something that's spiritual, whereas the land of Canaan, Israel, is the physical world, is also the story of the collector of wood, of the collector of wood, which on Shabbat, which they didn't know what to do with. What is his capital punishment? Moshe had to ask God, and he said stoning. So there too, the teaching is that what's the connection? Actually, that this collector of wood, his intent was had a good intent. It wasn't to desecrate Shabbos. What was his point? Because after, what did we just say? That it's that the whole idea of doing mitzvot is mainly land, agriculture, being involved in the physical world. But here, now they're just told to stay 40 years in the desert, right? So now people could start thinking that, okay, if we're staying in the desert, then we don't have to do all these mitzvot with physical objects here in the desert. Let's spend the next 38 years, whatever it is, 39, just living spiritual life without doing any physical observances, because that's the whole lesson of the Miraglim, of the spies, that you have to go in the holy. It's only when involved in the physical world that you do the mitzvah. So the wood collector was going to be a martyr to show that even doing physical things such as collecting wood on Shabbos deserves the capital punishment of death. And that would be a lesson showing everyone else that you should keep, that you should that they should keep the mitzvah. So ultimately he shouldn't have done that himself either. There are other ways we could learn it, but that was the thrust of this is the overall theme of the whole parsha. Same too, even before this, it says right after the Meraglim were called out for doing the wrong, and they were killed through the plague, that there was a small group that tried to rush and go to Israel nonetheless. There too, they were saying, so your lesson is that we have to really do the mitzvah, we have to be in a land with physicality. So what are we doing here in the desert? Why should we stay here another almost 40 years? Let's go straight back to Israel. There too, Moshe says, no. It's not up to you to decide where to go, when, and what. Yes, if there wouldn't have been the story of the spies, we would have gone in straight. We would have been already on that high spiritual level. I wouldn't have needed to prepare ourselves for almost 40 years in the desert to go and to embrace the physical world. But once we've shown, unfortunately, that we're not ready, then we can't prematurely rush it. We have to spend our time here in the spirituality as much as we can, and even do the physical mitzvahs as much as we can in the spiritual world of the desert. And once we're ready and aligned, then we could go into the Holy Land. Okay, so you see how basically the whole parsha here is all the same thing. Okay, so that is that. I just had what we will, let's just say, segue from the parsha a little bit into the month of Tammuz, which is coming up. I am going to pause now if anyone had any comment or question on anything we said until now. One more thing is, it also in our parsha, it's also Moshe reminds God about the 13 attributes of mercy to forgive the people after, just like after the golden calf story. Here too, after the story of the spies, also the 13 attributes are are mentioned. And it's just there's a cute story, so to speak, of art, which is also tells us of how we can be co-equal and be on a level amongst each other. We always try to bring in here. We did already a shtickle niggin earlier. Maybe we'll have time for another one later, especially Rachel is here. As just Rachel know that I was singing so much Friday night for Baba that I lost part of my voice. I can't go high. I'm a little raspy, so maybe you'll help out a little bit. Maybe we have a song to oh, I know what's in our parsha, what we could sing. So let me just tell you here. The story, short story of art, and then we can say that the Shizcha, the Yiddukot Shizcha said, following. That when he was a child, he was learning Aleph Beis, and they came and it came to the letters. So he asked, "What is a yud?" So his teacher, the Malamed, said, "A yud is a pintala, a dot. Like a yud is just a small thing, like a dot. It's good." So then he asked, "What is what happens if you have two pintalach?" Like, right? Like a pintala means a yud, and a yud also means a yid. Like a person, a yid, the person is like a pintala, a dot. That's a yud. So what happens? You look in some Sidurim or Chumashim, you have two yuds as a word. What are the two yuds? So we know that represents God's name. Instead of spelling out Yud Kei Vav Kei, a lot of Sidurim have two yuds for Hashem's name, right? So his Malamed told him that two yuds, two pintalach, that's God, right? So one is a yid and two is the God. So he said he continued reading in the Chumash or Siddur, and he sees that in some places at the end of sentences, he looks there, there's like two dots on top of each other, like this, like a shva, like on side to demarcate the end of a sentence. So then he asked his teacher, "What is this? What is that?" So he said, "Oh, that's not God. That's just showing the end of a sentence." So the Yiddah Kaddish asked, as a kid, he asked, "What's the difference? Here's two dots. You say it's God. Here's two dots. You say it's nothing. It's the line." So he said, "You have to understand. If it's on top of each other, if the two Yiddalach are on top of each other, then one is feeling superior to the other. So then there's no divinity there. It's just the end of a sentence. But if they're horizontally on the same level, one yid to the other on the same level, so then yes, then that is where God resides." So the yid said that's what he understood later, that when two yidden there, like they have make l'chaim together, which in the word l'chaim, he didn't say this, I'm adding it. In the word l'chaim, you have two yuds aligned with each other. That's the heart of the word l'chaim. They're drinking l'chaim together, and they're in a way where they comment each other. They're open to each other. They share with each other. They see each other as equals. So that is when God resides, right? That's the word chayim. Also, the inner is the two yuds, side to side, life. It's the most, and the outer is cham, warmth. That brings the warmth of the divine, of the people together, right? So based on this, he said, the Yid said, when he got older, he understood now. It says in our parsha that when after Moshe prays and reminds God of the 13 attributes of mercy that were used to save the people from the golden calf, and does it again now for the spies, and God answers the famous, what we say, Vayemer Hashem salachti kidvarecha, right? And Hashem said, "I forgive you like your words." If you want to see it in the Chumash, I'll show you on the screen right now. Here you see, and where Moshe said, "Now may God be great," as you said, the 13 attributes. Oh, Moshe tells God, "Forgive the people," and then verse 20, "Vayemer Hashem salachti kidvaracha." Right. So now, so the Yidakar said, the Rashi Tev's acronym, the first letters of Vayomer, Salachti, and Kidvarecha spell out are the letters of Kaf Vav Samach, which spell out Kos, which means the cup. That means when two Yidden sit down and drink together, L'chaim, in an honest way with each other, meaning they're using the cup to make L'chaim in the right way, then they can bring forgiveness. And then what they do, they bring in the two yuds. Here that's spelled out Yud Vavke, but in most you will have the yud yud. That means that the kos of Vayem Salach, it's missing the Hashem. So then the two yidden go into the kos, into the Vayem Salach, and then they bring God in. And then it says Vayem Hashem Salach. Okay, so l'chaim, and then maybe that's why it says right afterwards. Again, I'm adding I'm alive. God says, because when the two yidden say l'chaim, then they're enlivening God, and the v'malech Hashem aretz, so to speak. God embodies, fully manifests His honor in a revealed and living way in the whole land, and then we see the revelation of the divine. So l'chaim, whether it means physically or all the as we were just learning now, the whole parish, the whole thing means physically. So even if it's non-alcoholic, l'chaim, there's nothing like mayim. And blessing to everyone for the highest level, for everything that we're talking about earlier, ways of spiritual and all that, and especially physical health for all of us. So now, we'll segue a bit into the month. Okay, we'll just spend a few minutes on that, and then we'll go to the Hasidic part. Oh, you know what I mean? Oh, you know what? Maybe this is a good place to sing a niggin, especially with Rachel is here. I don't know if you know it, and that is also a verse related to this idea of divine forgiveness, which is later in the parsha, and we say this at the end of Kol Nidrei. That means before Ma'ariv of Kol Nidrei. That's here it is. That's the verse. V'nislach l'chol adas b'nei Yisrael. Verse 26. And that God would forgive the whole congregation Israel, even the strangers who live there, because they all have done an error. This is not speaking directly about the spies. This is speaking about in general. If one that brings a carbon needs to bring a sacrifice for shogeg, he inadvertently did something wrong. So he bring a special sacrifice. And by bringing the sacrifice, then God forgives. This is specifically related if a leader of the people does something inadvertently wrong. So through this, he forgives the whole people, including the followers, right? Known as the Einei Ha'edid, the eyes of the congregation. That means the leaders of that congregation. Okay. So Rachel, do you know the niggin we sing in Lubavitch to V'nislach?
Is it well, could you put it back on the screen?
Yeah.
V'nislach.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. So my voice is shot, so I'll follow you. Okay.
Well, my high voice is also a little bit done, but my lower voice is still there. So
good. Okay, so we'll do together.
Adas b'nei Yisrael. I could do it a little higher.
Wait, you want to try the Nislach? Can you do that?
How's this program?
It's the Lager. There's one more part. The Nisela Lecha
Is that how it goes?
Yeah, very good. Yeah. I know the end part a little bit different. Yeah. Yeah, very good.
Tried.
Thank you. Vivaldi. No, it's better. It's even best. Great. Vivaldi. Great. We're getting ready for Yom Kippur already.
There you go.
Right?
It's such a beautiful tune. Now that inspired me to go back and really learn it.
Right. Yeah, it really is. It really gives the that feel of what we call the Amos, you know, the reverence of the day.
What did it mean, the end part? I saw the beginning. Can you post it back up?
Yeah, hang on.
What was the Lagar Hagar? What was that?
The Lager Hagar, and for the stranger who lives in the land. Let me see if where did I have it open again? Here.
Wait.
1 second. No, 1 second. 1 second. I was already going to another window. V'nislach l'chol hadas b'nei Yisrael v'lager hagar b'seicham. Here. Where are we? I say it was. Okay, it was most probably the one before. Sorry there. I just have a lot of windows. Here, no. Hang on. You just want to see the words, yeah? Here, 26 it is. The Nislach, W'chaladas Nisrael should be given the whole congregation, and also the strangers who live in there, not even the non-Jewish members of the land of Israel are also, there's a Ger Taishab, it's known as, settlement on those who accept the Torah, like the 7 Noahide laws and Torah, though they don't keep though they're not technically Jewish. So that means that when the leader is forgiven, then everyone is forgiven. Because also, again, it's going back to the idea that a leader represents everyone, and the way the leader sets it, that's the way it goes. That's also connected to our theme that we're speaking about earlier, that the leaders to be on the level of the people, even even the physical way, because they represent the people through and through. So that's it's also a great lesson that even leaders could make mistakes. Okay, so now we're going to segue this and also connect with the parasha to our month. We don't have time to go through everything about the month, but I do want to point out a couple things. So Tammuz, which is beginning this coming month, and we're going to continue next week more. So the word Tammuz is actually from a Babylonian Akkadian word, which was a name of an idol, believe it or not, or those that worshipped an idol. The word is brought down in Ezekiel chapter 8, based around idol worship, and it means two things. It's brought down both an idol and also meaning a word meaning like warmth. Okay, that means this is the hottest time of the year, heat. We have the solstice coming up, and actually, according to certain commentaries, the idol of Tammuz was such that it had empty sockets, was made out of metal, had empty sockets, and they would put hot lead into the idol, pour it down, I suppose, from the top, and drops of liquid lead would flow out of the eye sockets of this idol. And people who were around it would see the spectacle of this. I'm trying to think of what graphic novel type of analogy there is out there, something like this, some big metal transformer type of monster, Marduk with its eyes dripping hot lead, and the people would stand around and they would weep. Okay, so we see Tammuz has to do with heat and has to do with vision. Okay. In fact, in the Sefer Yetzirah, Tammuz is related to every month is associated with another human activity, and the activity of this month is Re'iyah, vision. Okay. In fact, even though the Sefer Yetzirah says the body part, which also goes every month as a different body part, is the right hand, yet according to the Arizal, it is the right eye. So again, vision. And this idea of vision is also connected twofold. First of all, every month is also associated with a different tribe, different leader tribe, even like the way the encampments, the 12 tribes were camped out in the desert. So if you go around from the first encampment, you count around. So when it comes to this month, the 4th month, it is represented by Reuven. Reuven, we know, is called Reuven by Leah because it says that she said, God saw my impoverishment. So again, associated with vision. And as we mentioned before, the spy story of our parsha begins the eve of the day before Tammuz, the last day of Sivan, or right before Sivan, a day or two before Sivan, Chavtes, meaning the bulk of the 40 days of the spies. Let's say it took a day or two to get it, whatever, but the bulk of it was in Tammuz. So again, and spying has to do with vision, right? As we speak, eyewitnessing, I spy, so on. So we see how Tammuz is related so much to sight, vision, which makes sense because this is also a time when the sun is out most, it's most bright, the most that we have exposure and using vision. And so the point of Tammuz is to take negative vision, the vision of see, maybe let's say seeing the wrong things, especially the summertime. There's a lot of visual distractions, and to transform it to holy vision, seeing beautiful, positive, sacred stuff. Right. That too is also connected to our parsha. At the end of the parsha, that tzitzit is supposed to be something that says you see. You're supposed to look to see the tzitzit, and then you remember the gods, right? There's the verses that you first. It says like not to stray after your hearts, and after your eyes. Right? It's not, usually we say the opposite, that first you see something, first you see, like if for distractive type of negative, like if you see, first you make eye contact, and that creates carnal excitation, let's call it, right? So that tzitzit is to combat that, to look at something positive, to combat that. Incidentally, it's also a lesson that the reverse, because in the parsha tzitzit says, doesn't say do not stray after your heart and do not. It does not say do not stray after your eyes and after your hearts. But first says with your hearts and eyes. That's a lesson, in fact, that even before you get distracted visually to see where inappropriate places and things, it's also a matter of where your heart is internally set. And if it's set eternally the right way, then your eyes won't be distracted to the wrong ways. In fact, I'm just going to go out a moment from the share screen. In fact, there's a teaching, a Chasidic teaching, that there's a halacha of having kosher milk, chalav Yisrael, milk that was supervised by a Jew. It's called chalav Yisrael. Whereas chalav akum is milk that is done by a Gentile, even though it's kosher. There are people that have a special, even though halachically could drink even milk that's seen by a Gentile, supervised by a Gentile, still the hidur, the best type of milk, and like Lubavitch has a chumrah and follows this custom, is only chalav Yisrael. So the verse is chalav. I think it's a mish or some halach. Chalav shechav Yisrael akum ve'en Yisrael aveyu. What do you do about milk that a Gentile milks and a Jew doesn't see it? So the Chernobyl Rebbe read it the following. It's not, that in itself is a teaching that if it's milk that a Gentile milk, then the ideal Jew doesn't even see it. If it's something has to do with something not of the Jewish path, then it's not in the visual range of the Jew. Yid. Reminds me of the story that when the Lubavitch Rebbe started the whole campaign of putting on tefillin on Fridays and other times, even for people who never put on tefillin. So the Lubavitcher, young Lubavitchers were out in the streets, some places which were like in the main Tachana Merkazit of Tel Aviv, which is known as, the main train station in Tel Aviv, and there were certain like immodest posters up and such. So there was one Friday afternoon. There was a Lubavitcher had his booth up, wrapping, secular Israelis up with tefillin, and and a well-intended, like, non-Hasidic, like very Haredi from Jew came, and he quotes the Lubavitcher, says, tells the Lubavitcher, a young guy, sir, I know you're doing something great, but how can you do it here in the middle of the trade? You see all these inappropriate posters around. How can you do it? To which the young Lubavitcher responded, Rabbi, that's very interesting. I've been coming here for months every Friday afternoon, and I never noticed these posters. And here you come for the first time, and right away you see them. It was like we call it in Yiddish. It was a shtech. It was like it was like a sharp rebuttal. But that's the point. Like where our heart is intended, then the eyes won't. In other words, the blinders of the eyes are not on the surface, on the outside, on the eyes. It's in our hearts, and then automatically you won't go to the right way. That's generally speaking. Of course, you should still be the right way, intended, blah blah blah. But we're talking about where the heart is, right? So we see here also that's like especially like how even our parsha is related to the idea of how to have proper vision, focus. In fact, and not only the whole idea of spying was because they were using their vision in seeing it in a negative way, but in fact, like the Medrash, I think Rashi brings down also the continuation of the story of the spies from the end of the last week's parsha, which was the whole story of Miriam, speaking about Moshe. That the Rashi says, let me see it, that the issue was that when it says, why does the story of the spies come after Miriam? Because Miriam was punished with the leprosy because she spoke about Moses's separation from his wife Zipporah, right? It wasn't wrong. She didn't mean wrong either. Meaning, in other words, she didn't mean wrong. But the point was, she shouldn't have just made this information public, right? And still, she was public. It says Rishayim Aloyu, and actually, Rashi is interesting calling these. We just spoke about the spies were great people. And Rashi is saying these were taka wicked because ultimately they weren't following the full way. They saw. It wasn't just they heard what Miriam did, but they saw, and they didn't learn from Miriam that you don't go rattle-tattling in public things that are inappropriate, because that's ultimately what the spies did. They were speaking negatively about the land. But it's interesting that Rashi says they saw. What was so again? It was almost they were looking in the inappropriate way. What were they not looking inappropriate? It wasn't just that they heard what Miriam said, heard through the grapevine, or maybe even heard directly from Miriam, but they saw, but it was more than that. They even saw the aftermath of Miriam's leprosy. And still they didn't learn from that. So it's a great reminder of the power of proper healthy vision. And also, right, meaning of what happens when it's unhealthy vision, and also the power of healthy vision. Like we said earlier, we speak about in the very beginning about visions or looking at tzitzis, or even things like people seeing is believing. Seeing is believing. This is the famous saying: if you see something in the right way, positive, or we say, "I've seen the light. I once was blind, but now can see," as the Amazing Grace song goes, right? But when you see, that means amazing grace. You see, you're grateful when you have the right pure vision. In fact, I'm going to end off this, and then we'll go to Chassidus with one last very interesting acronym from the Breslov, Rav Nachman Breslov. Here, I put it on the screen. This is from the verse in Ezekiel, about the vision of Ezekiel's vision, the great one that we read in Shavuot, of all the holy animals and the angels with 6 wings and the spinning fires of wheels of fire and electric. So when it begins with the verse that Ezekiel says, "Niftachu hashamayim ve'ere mares Elokim," that the heavens opened and I saw the vision of God. Says Reb Nachman, if you take the first letter of these 5 words, they spell the same letters as the word emunah, faith. Aleph, mem, vav, nun, he. Not in order, but you have all 5 letters there. Meaning, if you have the right, proper, open vision to the divine, then not only you'll have these great visions, but this is also the seeing is believing idea. Okay. So again, we have in our parsha examples of negative, how vision could lead us astray, and also ways of how we could align our vision in the healthiest of ways. Okay, so keep, or as the end of Monty Python, I think it's Life of Brian says, keep on looking on the bright side, right? Just keep on looking on the bright side. Okay. Good. So I think we covered enough of all that. And now, as promised, and we really, not to delay this anymore, we'll at least cover a bit, continue on our theme of Chasidim Misnagdim. If anyone has any last minute or anything briefly they want to pipe in on, now is a good time. Okay, let's see. We're not going to spend much time on the Chassidus part. Okay, we'll just do enough. But this is what we'll do. The theme, just like very brief recap. What we've been covering in our how do you say it? Our sub series of segments in our whole series of the whole dynamic or even disputations between Chasidim and Misnagdim. We've been focusing extra innings or innings within the game. Extra means it's at the end, but this is more in the middle somehow. You know what this reminds me of? Sometimes you have 7 aliyot for Shabbos, but sometimes you want to give more people aliyot, so some people just break up the middle aliyot to 3 into more, so you have a bunch of mini aliyot in the middle. Okay, so basically, as we were talking about how by the publication of the first Hasidic book ever in 1780, which is the book of teachings of Rabbi Yaakov Yosef Polna, the book was called Todos Yaakov Yosef, that led to the second main wave of excommunications against Chassidim, like 2 years later or so, right? Something like that, a couple of years later, a year or 2 later. And in fact, that the Misnagdim were quoting from this book, showing how the Chassidim were erring and maybe even being heretical. And a main idea that was being quoted was the Hasidic take on how to deal with foreign thoughts, alien thoughts, whether it was in davening, that was the main thing, or even foreign thoughts not davening, when out on the street. This is related exactly, mamish, to what we were talking about. When the eyes start wandering, that could lead to alien thoughts, right, on the streets. So with that, we started delving into the different ways that the Rabbi Yaakov Yosef Polna discusses the idea. So basically, if alien thoughts is the negative perspective, then the positive side is kavanot, how to have the right alignment and focus, kavanot, to positive, the divine or positive. Now, we are not focusing that much on what is kavanah and all that per se. And that, in a way, could also be a very we could delve into that more. Maybe we will at some point in the future. But just think of that as the contrast. The positive approach of thought would be something aligned to kavanah, intention, which creates devekut, connection, constant attachment to the divine. Whereas if our minds or hearts are distracted, all the more if they go down to not only the negative, neutrally negative thoughts, but let's say even all the more so illicit thoughts, right? Prohibited thoughts, let's call it. Then we've detached. Then we've given up kavanah, and we're detached from our dveikut, our connection with the divine. So we are now. So what we've been going through is different forms of two things. What is the phenomenon of the alien thought, and we've seen that Yaakov Yosef, primarily based on the teachings of his teacher Baal Shem Tov, which is what we were going through, mainly the way he quotes from his teacher, the Baal Shem Tov, on the subject, is that these alien thoughts are actually at the end of the line of the exile of the Shekhinah in the world, certainly on a psychic level. And so in a way, they're actually, we almost have pity on it, because it's like it's almost like the divine sparks that was through the shattering of the vessels that created the whole world. So now they're stranded in the negative or even illicit psychic realm. So that is what it is, or as we said, it's in the malchut of malchut, at the very, very end of all the sphere. So how do we deal with it? So then there's the techniques that the Yaakov Yosef Pana brings from, there were two main disciples of the Baal Shem Tov, Yaakov Yosef Pana and the Maggid of Mezrich, just so you know. So Yaakov Yosef Pana is what we're getting direct, straight, and it seems like Yaakov Yosef Pana spent more time with the Baal Shem Tov. And it seems like he received more teachings from the Baal Shem Tov, even more than the Maggid. Plus, he wrote the book. This was a book that he himself wrote and supervised. And he writes in first person, I heard from my master, etc., etc. Whereas whatever we have from the Maggid was all from this was already another degree away. It wasn't the Maggid himself writing it, it was his students writing what the Maggid told them he heard from this fact. Okay, so what we get, in a way, what we're getting from the Yaakov Pana is more, I want to say more authentic, but it has certainly a more direct connection to the Baal Shem Tov. That's why it's so important to read, to really get the Baal Shem Tov, to read Yaakov Yosef Pana, which and for some reason and just because the Maggid was more of the actual successor, continuing, it had so many disciples, is therefore most of what we do have, what usually we have from the Baal Shem Tov is through the Maggid. But again, we're going through here. Our focus is to tell this Yaakov Yosef. Okay, so the techniques are. This is different Torahs we covered in the past cover different parts of the techniques. But if we were to combine them, we would say it's like the following. Now, as you're thinking, so you're thinking an alien thought, right? So then when you catch yourself, you're thinking it, right away, envision that that there is, in this alien thought, there's that spark of the Shekhinah, and feel bad for it, and how it's suffering, in a way, but moreover, tremble, be scared, also that your mind wandered so far away into this realm, and that will detach the spark from the actual negative proper thought, release it, and then that will also carry the person back to the kavanah, to focus appropriately, and get back, whether it's to the davening or whatever, or right in the case of having alien thought in prayer or study Torah, or if it's even in the streets, in a way to get back away from that. More specifically, we went through the 3 H's, the 3 S's idea. Let me bring that up again just to remind everyone. Have it here, especially because it seems like there's some people who are tuned in now that weren't here when we said it earlier a few weeks ago. It was also right. Memory. Right. Oh, here we are. And that is the 3 S's or H's, which is Hachna'a, Avdalah, Hamtaka. To sublimate, surrender, or subserviate oneself, that one give up one's selfness of ego, that I am the one thinking this thought. Focus more on the trapped Shekhinah or spark, divine spark. So now you're not getting in the way of yourself, of this this misdirected thought process. And then when you're in that state, now you're focusing more on not on how you are thinking, but on that which is being thought. And then separate the good part from the negative part of it. And like we were saying before, releasing the holiness of the Shekhinah that's trapped in there. And when you do that, then you could transform it into sweetening it, right? Hamtaka, into elevate it back to its source. Okay, so that is, in a nutshell, the 3, that is the system of the Baal Shem, of the Baal Shem Tov. You all saw that, right? Whoever was interested, right? I did share screen in that, right? There, right, okay, there. Now, I just want to just throw this out, and that is that there is another factor here, which is not as emphasized in our text that we've been reading. Maybe it'll come up later, and that is that there is some way to even take the substance, the content of that foreign thought, and see it as an idea and a meaning that in itself could be like, in this way we're talking about, it's not even going into, it's more going to the form or the idea of thinking something for alien, but it's not going into the content of it, of what you're thinking. However, there are places, even Yaakov Yerzikol now will tell us that even there are ways to separate the content of the thought itself and elevate it to the holiness. And hopefully we'll get there. I mean, an example is like what I gave before weeks ago when we're talking about when we brought down from Gemara of a certain the Amora who was thinking of chicks or the bricks of the wall, and that could even mean how they're thinking, or let's say, and I mean this is or for example, we did learn something. Let's say if you witness a friend doing something wrong, so that is also a lesson for oneself, that there's something in oneself related to that is also wrong to work on. Okay, so that is not just an alien thought. I mean, the biggest example, and it's brought down, I think, in Yaakov Yerzikol himself, but certainly by the Maggid and others. For example, the classic. This is from a male, what they call in feminist studies, the male gaze. That if not, maybe a female gaze too, in that way, which is if the man sees a very attractive woman, or which even excites him, or let's say a woman similarly to whoever she's attracted to. So there is a way to think of how this attractive individual is actually originates on a high spiritual level from like the sphere of Tiferet, which is beauty in the divine realm, and it's just come down into human form. There's a way to abstract away from the physical form thereof, or certainly the carnality related to it, and that way, even and then directed into a holy, passionate way. Okay, so that's an example. I don't think we yet went through a text that explicitly states it out, but we may come across something like this in the future. Okay, so I'm just giving a recap of on the subject that we discussed till now. For tonight, just to cover some grounds on it, what we will do is, I won't call it like filler-ins, but something like that, which is that as we know, that we were focusing mainly on these teachings that are at the end of the book Talis Yaakov Yosef, which is a whole list of direct teachings from the Baal Shem Tov that Yaakov Yosef says, I heard from my master, right? And a few of them were the stuff, actually everything that we were speaking about till now, the ideas and the techniques, and this is coming from there. So there's a few more there. So we'll so that the idea is to cover that, and time permitting, also a few more Torahs related to that system of the Baal Shem Tov and the Yaakov Yosef of the three S's or the three H's of sublimation, separation, sweetening, or Hachna Havdal Hamtaka. Okay, so and that way will also refresh us what we were learning until now, and then we'll see where we'll go from there. Okay, so this is towards the very end of the book of Talis Yaakov Yosef, a very short Torah. That the Yaakov Yosef says, Shamati Mimenu, I also heard from my teacher, the Baal Shem Tov. The verse in Isaiah says, V'kavei Hashem yachlifu kayach, that those that have real hope and trust in God, they switch their energy, they switch their power, they can transform their power. What does it mean? So the Baal Shem Tov interpreted this verse to mean, Ki ayidei machshava ra izara yuchol lavid Hashem. That through an iniquitous or even a foreign alien thought, you could serve Hashem. Kigain, for example, v'chulu, etc. Now, what is this, etc.? So first of all, here we're seeing again this idea that just because you have an alien thought, this here is another great teaching here psychologically for the person who's thinking. First of all, to think, and we mentioned this, I think it's related to entire. Know that everything is divine providence, so hashgacha pratis. The very fact that a bad or alien thought fell in your head is itself thrown to you from God, given to you from God. So for a reason, whether it is to overcome it, to become better in thought, or is it even because there's a lesson even in this bad thought, that there's a good part to this bad thought that you could extract from it, do like very almost like hair splitting surgery, cutting to take the good out of the bad, and use even the part of the content like we just said. And also it helps psychologically that the person doesn't feel too bad, crestfallen, or become paralyzed that I'm such a bad person that I had this bad thought. Because if you know in advance even, and if you're going to have a bad thought, or when you're having the bad thought, that this too can be used to serve God, so then you're gonna be still feel empowered enough to serve God. The worst is like almost the Catholic thing that you do something wrong, and you feel so bad. Oh, I'm not perfect now. I'm a terrible person. So firstly, yeah, you it's like you fall on your face, and you can't serve God and continue serving God. And B, usually there's this almost vicious cycle that could be built. That person already self-identifies as being a bad person, and therefore will almost start doing that to continue doing or repeating and even doing worse things, right? So we want to avoid all that. So so there's a way to do it. And don't eat yourself up fully in a way that don't give into it just because you have the bad thought that you're a bad person, right? You could almost say, yes, it's wrong what I did, what I'm thinking now. I shouldn't be thinking that, but I'm not going to let that control me either, or make that who I am either, and see it, and both in a way to detach, almost like object relations, maybe in Freudian psychology, post-Freudian psychology. You could take your thought and make it identified as something as outside of oneself, and to work with and discern, and B, see it as actually an opportunity to serve God in ways that you wouldn't have been able to otherwise. Again, of course, don't go out there to begin with, to fill one's head with the wrong types of thoughts. But if inadvertently it does fall into one's head, there are methods to how to deal with it, not only to get rid of them, but even how to serve, create Hashem through by them. Now, back to this Torah. He says, for example, etc. So what's the etc.? So firstly, as we mentioned before, at the beginning, the caption of this whole section of this litany of teaching the Baal Shem Tov, the Yaakov Yosef says that there's teachings here that are a bit, he implies, let's say openly, that they're a bit too radical. They can't even really write them out, spell them out, right? So he is, there's the term, it says, you reveal one portion and conceal two, meaning he's revealing and concealing at the same time. So that's what he's doing here. He's giving us a teaching that you could serve God even by having a negative, bad, or for, but he's not spelling it out. He's giving the full examples, at least not in this term. He goes, etc. What I personally think is it could be related to things that are really wrong, illicit thoughts, such as ones that have to do with eroticism. That could be what's implied by this, etc. Or other illicit thoughts, not just neutral thoughts of, it could be anything. As we spoke about in the past, there's different ways that, right? We spoke about 3 ways of illicit thoughts. The worst is thinking something that's totally illicit, again, in something where you see something really terrible, negative, eroticism, or things, or doing harm to someone terribly, or plotting to do some, really wrong act, whatever that may be. That's one. Second foreign thought, right? So that first foreign thought is anytime, even you're walking out in the street as well. Then you have something called like a neutral thought. I should throw out the garbage, or I need to make a phone call to my doctor, right? So that if you're in your regular walking down the street in your office work, then that's not wrong. That's a part of your life, things you need to do. But when you're davening, you shouldn't be thinking about that, right? You should be thinking only about God, not about calling the doctor, etc. Then there's the more subtle one we mentioned is if when you're davening, you're learning, you're thinking about, is my davening or learning at its fullest or not? And you're stepping away from being immersed in the davening and learning to think of, to observe almost like from the outside of oneself to see if how's your kavan in davening, something like that. Which that last one we said that actually has some validity and appropriateness. Okay, be it as it way. So I'm just mentioning this because that this etc. could cover any of those that we're saying. Okay, let's just finish this short paragraph. Well, you know what? Let me look this up in Isaiah 40. we'll see exactly how I thought I had the window open to Isaiah 40, but I could do it quickly. Isaiah 40. Isaiah 40, what did we say that is? Verse 31. Let me just screen share. Isaiah 40, 30, verse 31. Yeah. Okay, it doesn't say the rabbi type. So that's the Yaakov Yosef Pana, or the Talmud is added interpretation of it. What does it mean to transform power, the energy? It means to change, means from the bad to good, that there is a way. We could use again the parlance of the Baal Shem Tov's technique to sweeten the bad negative thought into a good thought, into something good. And in fact, that this could actually enhance and to give power in one to serve Hashem. Okay, so here again is we even have a teaching about Shem Tov, a proof text that even we have a negative bad thought, there's a way to deal with it, and you could even use it to serve God. Okay. I mean, honestly, there's all these other interesting Torahs from Baal Shem Tov, or in this whole section, but including of what to think about when you go to the bathroom. But it's I just want, it's just the one right after, so I'm not even going to read it. It just says like okay, forget it. It's too scatological, and it's not associated. If anyone is interested, ask me later, and I'll fill you in. You know, I mean, it's a little too schmutzy for right now. Right, we did all these. There's, I think, one or two in this section. You know what? I'll do it because in a way it is related to Machshavas Eretz. I think you'll see even things as related to by the way, the Baal Shem Tov and Rav Nachman Breslov were also, they didn't shy away about talking about bodily functions, like going to the bathroom, by the way, and they even had certain health techniques, how to deal with constipation or loose bowel, blah 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 blah. Anyways, so he says the Yaakov Yosef says, I heard from the Baal Shem Tov how to hold yourself back if you need to go to the restroom while you're davening. So pause while you're davening and think that you have in oneself small like vein or orifices and large orifices. Like also urinating is in Hebrew known as going ketanim, small, and defecating is known as going big, gedolim. Okay, and so it's also a teaching that small means means if you have to urinate, basically. So remember that this is teaching you that you should be that is to show you that you're still on a small level. To keep you humble, right? Actually, this is related to our teachings because when you need to go to the restroom while you're davening, then the thought is falling into your head. I need to go to the bathroom, which is distracting you from the davening. So the Baal Shem Tov is telling us how to deal with such a type of thought too, that override it with the thought, oh, I have to urinate. So that means I have to go to ketanim, small, meaning I am still small, and I have to still work and this is humbling me to be in that level. And moreover, that it's even I'm so imperfect and small that I even need to go to the restroom. I can't even I cannot even transcend my bodily functions here. So then here he throws in the word from the three S's or H's that we said. And when you think like this, that when you do that you have to go to number one, so then and you think that this brings to you this state of katnus, that you're small, humility, then ulamatkam, then that is sweetening the thought, and it's also implying that you'll also be able to overcome the thought of needing to go to the bathroom to urinate. Similarly, or not, or at least related to it, is that if you need to go number two, that's called gedalim, like big. So that is teaching us to be gadol. That means not be yourself egoistically big, but rather that you are to magnify oneself. Because gadol is bar in its gadol. And this thought, I need to go number two. Is telling me to become big and to be proud. Meaning that okay, this part is actually in pointing out something negative, something about the person. That this is that I am now in a state of haughtiness. I'm trying to make myself big and priding myself. Therefore, I now am thinking I have to go release myself on the royal throne. This is in order to humble me. That I'm very mortal. I'm not such a big individual. This is actually there to bring humbleness, humility to the person, and this is also connected to a verse from in the Megillah, where it says Queen Esther says Tischalchal hamalka ma'od. That means that the word Chachal means, I think it means there, like she hesitated to go to King Achashverosh, or I think it is to communicate through Haggai to Mordechai, and it says there in the Gemara in Megillah says that means that she needed to go to the restroom then. And and the word Fatischalchal is like we say Nashayatzar chalulim, right? The kavim chalulim, holes and pathways, bodily organs for functions. So it's connecting that there's even something of a spiritual or a positive aspect of it, even related to a tzedekis like Queen Esther. And here again, he cryptically goes, the idea is v'chulu, etc. Basically, he himself, the Rabbi Yashkesh, the Ponah doesn't want to spell out completely this whole Torah. And he says, v'zet tzarech l'panim, that means this means more to be insight, to discuss, which he doesn't want to go into, or how to correlate it with halacha. The hapeiskin kasu, because the halacha says, the paiskin write about such scenarios. What do you do with if you have to go to the restroom while you're davening? When you pause, how to pause, when things like and how do you deal with it? Because there's two parts. In general, there's the idea that in general, if you have to go to the restroom, you're not allowed to hold it in. It's called balta shaksu. All the more so when you're praying, when it's to pray with the guf naki, a holy body, a pure body. Clean body, nothing. Meaning that you shouldn't have waste in your internal organs, especially if you feel the urge to go. So it's preferable that if you're in the places of davening where you could stop davening, to take care of the business, and pause davening, go take care of what you need to, and then come back to daven because of guf naki. In fact, this idea of guf naki, clean body, is one of the reasons why Chasidim were, use the word notorious or whatever, their reputation was that they would daven late. They wouldn't daven right away at the crack of dawn of the Fasikin. And at times they even daven what seemed like after the formal official time of davening, let's say Shacharis and such. And one of the reasons was that they felt that to make hachanot preparations for davening didn't just mean spiritually, but it meant practically to make sure that their bodies have they've taken care of emptying their bowels and such. So in order that their bodies be clean in order to daven, that was important. My theory it's just my personal theory, because you could say, what about the Misnagdim? They didn't think about Gufnaki and all that, and didn't they think of the importance? So this is just my personal social observation, that like Chasidim was maybe it's because Chasidim were more known to stay up late at night and farbringing and eating and drinking, not mixing l'chaim until late at night. So therefore, by the next morning, they still had more in their system, and they weren't ready to take care of everything right away. So therefore, it took longer for them in the morning till they felt that they had a clean body. Whereas Misnagdim they didn't stay up late at night eating or farbringing or something like that. Right, that's all. And therefore they didn't have as much of that issue. Again, this is just my pure conjecture, and don't quote me on it. Okay, so let's see. We have a few more minutes. Let's do a little bit more. I'm just going to find. Okay, so yeah, I do apologize.
Apropos of all that,
yeah.
Did he have any particular cures for hangover?
Not for hangover that I know of. There could be other. Oh, you know who we could ask? We could ask Eli Moses. He would know more of the practical segulot and things of the Baal Shem Tov. But there are segulot of the Baal Shem Tov about things like shilshul, which we would associate with diarrhea.
No, but I was thinking more in terms of just, all the l'chaims.
Well,
at some point.
Right, hangover, right, yeah. I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know if it's Baal Shem Tov himself. I don't. The reputation of Chasidim drinking a lot, and I don't think was in that very first generation of Baal Shem Tov. I think it was more the second or third generation. So maybe there are segulot or ideas from Rebbes after him.
Oh, I was just curious.
Yeah. Yeah. There's the idea of,
I mean, you wouldn't have wanted to be davening hungover, basically.
Right, that too, 100%. I mean, it is an issue. I know, let's say in Lubavitch, there were a lot of farbringers till late at night, and they get up and a bit, yeah. I mean, there's the idea of you have to pray with a dayat slula, with a clear mind, a sober mind. So
exactly,
certainly for that part. I'm trying to remember if there are any Lubavitch segulot other than what are the Lubavitch hangover remedies? It's a very good question. Other than coffee and marble cake, I'm trying to remember. Davening, not sure. Good question. Maybe I'll ask Ellie. Okay. By the way, the idea of even having an erotic thought as being distracted, we did learn in the past when it had to do with Abraham. Remember Abraham and Sarah? It's right here, it's on the screen. And when he said, now I see that you're a beautiful woman, and all that, and how to elevate even such a thought. But even here, he doesn't go into detail of it. There's at least one or two more here. This one we did also. Remember about the Adonai, Svatzai Tiftach, the Aleph and the Din letters, how it goes down. Okay, so here's one. This one is a little bit more, this is called complicated. And it does mention in the idea of alien thought. So let's just at least start it. Let me see if I have the right verse open. Yeah. So here is the verse in Psalms 109 that King David laments about the wicked, right? That do deceitful things and speak false, and that these wicked people are surrounding him, pursuing him, fighting against him, and instead in return, it says, "In return of my love, they are my adversaries, but I need tefillah, but I am still all prayer." It means David is saying, I'm still not distracted from all these people that are trying to knock me down. Even though they do bad to me instead of good and hate me, and wicked. Yet the wicked, when they will be judged, they will go back, they'll be condemned, and their prayer will be turned into sin. And now, King David says, almost like gives a curse to these wicked people, that may their days be short, few, and taking charge of them. And it goes, may their children be orphans, and his wife a widow. His children be vagabonds, beg and seek bread, need to beg for bread. And then it says, let the creditors take away, they take away everything that they need, everything they have, and that and strangers take their everything that they have as spoils. Okay. So based on this, the Baal Shem Tov said on this verse, what is the punishment of the wicked person that his wife should be an orphan, a widow, and his children orphans? In other words, implied is that he'll be killed. So it should just say, may the wicked person be killed. Implied here is that there's a state where the wife or children could be widows and orphans, yet the Russia still is alive. So what's going on here? Why does King David phrase it like this? So he almost like a little bit like a pilpul. So he says we will proceed it with the following famous piece of teaching from the Gemara. That his famous teaching is Talmud Gadol Shemei V'Lemas. It's a question, debate. I think it's Rabbi Yosef and the Rabbanan. I forget. What is greater, to study or to do acts? Let's say learning Torah or doing a mitzvah. Which is greater? To which the answer is, it's that study is greater than doing an action, because Talmud study brings to doing action. How do you know how to do a mitzvah? By learning the Torah about that mitzvah. So since the Torah leads to doing the mitzvah, therefore therefore the study is greater. The Hiksha, so Baal Shem Tov asked, Mashmam Demaisa Gadol. What do you mean? Anything that's prerequisite or to something else means that you're really valuing the outcome, what it's leading to, that more than the thing itself. So why do we say that the study, which is what leads to the action, is greater? Because it leads to the action. If it's leading to the action, then it's subservient to the action. Then really, the action should be greater than the study about the action. Because the study is just about it, but it's not the thing itself. Right? So it's just the opposite. It's not that study is great because it's greater than action, because it leads to action. If the whole value of study, why it's greater, is because it leads to action, implied in that is that action is of great value. If so, the study for it is only the prerequisite for it. So again, it's of lower value than the thing itself, the action itself, right? So the Baal Shem Tov answered, "Ki talmid yesh by shnehem," because really, when we say study is great because it leads to action, it's not just that it's an intro. It's like what we call is again the prerequisite for it, or just to have the knowledge about it. But really, when you're studying this in the study itself, you have the action too. In other words, if you study about something, even if you don't do it, you also have the part of the doing in the studying about it too. What is the prime example here? It brings it's like we know the Gemara says, especially these days, that we don't bring sacrifices. So whoever studies about the sacrifices, it's as if you brought the sacrifice itself. So we already see that in the studying of the Torah is the thing itself, or like also the verse says, when the Shalom Parnasosenu, our lips will make up for the animals that are supposed to be sacrificed. So that's a teaching that prayer is like bringing sacrifices too. So again, study, which is using our minds and our mouths, or similarly prayer, even though it's not the thing itself, or you're just studying about it, or you're praying, or again, but that is like you're doing the things. So so therefore, if you're studying about the action, then you're already in the study, you have the value of the action itself, even though you didn't really do it. But whereas if you didn't study about it, you just did the action without the studying the Torah about it, so then you don't have both values of study and action. You only have the action without the study. Okay? So how's this connected to what we're learning? Let's continue. Now he's bringing another concept. This is all going to tie in together. We know that our soul is made up of 5 compartments, almost like onion rings or something. That's the way he's saying. And again, he's saying the word garments, like we were learning earlier. Thought, speech, and action are garments to the souls. In fact, in other places, it says more specifically that action is the garment to speech, and speech is a garment to thought. It's almost like you're wearing your undershirt, your shirt, and your jacket. Okay. So to the soul, that the outer garment is the lowest level of the soul nefesh, which this is the garment to the soul part of ruach, which is higher, which is the soul, which is the garment to the soul part of neshama, which is the highest in the 3 main parts of the soul. Imkain, nefesh, ruach, neged ruach, nika ishtay. So in other words, when they say outer garment is something inside, that means that is the vessel to the thing inside, or the receiver to the thing inside. So in the traditional genderized way, that female is vessel, receiver, and male is giver or internal. Or also we say there's the verse Nikeva to Seviv Gever, that the woman surrounds the male. That means the outer layer is more of the feminine, inside is more the masculine. So if so, the nefesh would be like the wife to the ruach, and the ruach would be the husband. Okay, but it's not just there because there are more layers, right? So ruach nikun neged neshama ishta. So to ruach is like the wife to neshama, meaning even though ruach is like the husband vis-a-vis nefesh, but vis-a-vis neshama, the ruach would be the wife. It's like there's I forget the exact context that the righteous is from it. It's Leia, swallows up, meaning it is that which is within, what's swallowed within. It's tzad. Okay. Now we're going to go to another point, and then we're going to tie it all together. it says, right? It says that Doig and Achitophel, Doig that in fact David HaMelech learned. It's like the Mishnah says, learned two things from Doig. And Achitophel was also a great teacher of Torah. They were both great teachers of Torah, but they were learning things inappropriate, that not in the full kavana of Torah. And I think they even challenged David HaMelech in learning Torah. Remind me, I'm going to look at, because, I didn't look at this honestly in a few weeks, because I never knew when we're going to actually cover this. So, so hopefully next time we come and learn, I'll fill in more of the details. The point is about what is the context here, it's more specifically. But the point is that Doeg and Achitophel both challenged David in learning, and also revealed that their learning was not in its pure. It was there was some ulterior motives involved, meaning that it was the shalei lishma, as we say. Shalom Torah, right? So on the shalei lishma, but not for the purest intents of Torah. But they did learn Torah. So they were involved in Torah. It wasn't like they were not Torah, but it wasn't the most perfect way of learning Torah. So Shalom Akapanim Torah, they actually learned Torah. Shahu man l'tefillah. Studying Torah is the preparation. Man stands for Mayim Nukvin, feminine waters. Means that which brings arousal. Meaning that in this scenario, in order to pray, before you pray, you should learn before you pray. Because the learning Torah brings an arousal of the soul, activates the soul to be on a higher level, spiritual level. It's like the prep. And then you could go into davening, okay? It's interesting on this concept, what to do first, because there's some places it says first daven and then learn. Like we mentioned earlier, it's a Gemara also, and I think also in Brachos, that says that first the daven, and then you have to go to the Beit Midrash to study. So there's that context too. But in this way, actually, and this is also more of a Hasidic way, certainly in Chabad they do this, there's the idea of learning Hasidus before you daven. And that is, in fact, very essential to Chabad way of davening, is that to learn Hasidic discourse, something in Hasidus, and then even use that to meditate upon it, and that puts one into the right mind, soul set, heart set, to go and take off in the flight of prayer, right? And also, as we know, Torah is more about, even though it's more about drawing down, and tefillah is about ascending, but here, in this sense, that is Torah in general. But Torah, as a prep for prayer, is the beginning of the stirrings of the ascent of prayer itself. That's why he says here it's the Mayim Nukvin, because the masculine waters, which is known as Mayim Duchrin, is what comes from top down. The Mayim Nukvin, the feminine waters, are the waters that rise from bottom up. Okay, so their davening was already a preparation to arouse the prayers. It's like the Marsha, which is a commentary on Talmud, and it also is a commentary on the more agadaic parts. He has two parts about on the more halachic parts of halach of Gemara, and interspersed of that is an agados of Chedushei Agadus of the Marsha, and in a lot of the Gemaras in the back after the Gemaras you'll have the Marsha. It's an essential super commentary to Gemara, Rashi, and Tosfos. It's like continuing in that way. Like traditional way of learning Gemara, you have like at least 4 or 5 levels. You first learn the Gemara, then you learn the Rashi and Tosfos, then you go into the back and you learn the Marsha, or the Mara, or the Maram Shif, or the Maram of Lublin. And then after that, you'll learn commentaries on rights of the Marsha, Maram Shif, and all that. Those are commentaries on the Gemara Shtays. And then after that, you go to other volumes that are not printed in the Gemara, like the Pnei Yeshua and others, which are commentaries on the Marsha and the Gemara Shtays, blah, 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 blah. And then you could go to even further compositions that are on the Pnei Yeshua, on other commentaries like that. So you could go at least 5-6 degrees from the Gemara to, if you want to learn a sugya, a subject in Gemara in depth. So Marsha is like the super commentary to the commentaries of Rashi and Basis in Gemara. What's up? So the Marsha says, I suppose on this Gemara, where it speaks about David and Daig and Achitepo, it's here, it says Hakavana liyira, but I think it's supposed to be Hachana, okay? But the whole Torah, sometimes Sefaria has some typos, just, but the whole Torah is a preparation liyira, Mikras Tefillah, is for fear. That Torah itself is a preparation for awe, or yira, which is for prayer, okay? So we establish that Torah is a preparation for prayer. With tefillah, mashpim lemiskalam mad neged mad. And then when we pray, it is true that prayer itself is an ascent, but the ascent is in order to activate shefa to flow down in response. Because prayer is asking for things from above, and so our prayer is to trigger and generate a response from above, to draw down the waters from above down here, which is the mad, the mayim duchim, the masculine waters. Neged man, in the par with the feminine waters that are rising. So the prayer, so the learning Torah and the prayers that follow is creating the rising of the feminine waters, and that is to bring down the shefa, to be mashpia, to bring down the shefa of the masculine waters in response to our prayers. Okay.
Is this actually an aliyah, letzorach yirida?
Yes. Yeah, very well put. In a way, yes. And like we've said, and more than I think also that in general, we see that, especially in the Baal Shem Tov's way of sweetening things, right? You're supposed to go up in order to bring it down. Yes, very much so. It is that dynamic. In fact, just think of what is the whole point of prayer. So when we even, like, there's two parts of prayer. Prayer is both praising God, but the most basic part of prayer, which is even more the halacha of what prayer is, the Rambam says this. There's two parts of prayer. Praising God is like almost more the higher, loftier, almost additional part of prayer. But the most basic part of prayer is not only tell God shvach, praise Him, but yivakish tzrachov, for a person to request his needs from God. Right? Slach lanu v'chatanu, rafeinu, hashivenu. Baruch Aleinu, etc., etc. Give me sim shalom, teva bracha, chaim chen v'chet rachma aleinu. So all this is asking, requesting for our needs, and ideally we're answered, and that is like you're saying. So our prayer is aliyah, and then that response to it, which is the shefa coming down, especially if it's like a bracha, let's say. Too is coming down to us, the Yerida down to us, right? So now, in the ideal way, when a person's learning in the right, well-intentioned way, where it's pure.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Before you move on to that next segment, can I stop you where you were talking about all the requests that we make in our prayers?
Yes.
How I pray on behalf of us to God. And then there's places near the end in Tachanun where it's very much ani ve'ata, sheli and shelcha. It's like singular first person. Right,
but it's more rare.
Hashem, where it's in other cases plural first person. Anachnu.
Right. So most of the times in our prayers, it is plural, collective, like
Right.
us, Hashamnu, Bagadnu, etc. Seems
Yes.
right. It's actually rare where you have singular.
And by the
Right,
way, after Tachanun, it comes back around to Aleinu.
right, Aleinu,
Right.
and even in Tachanun, I'm not 100% sure what you're referring to, because I don't see Anivata in Tachanun. Right, I have in David when you do Tachanun.
I'm talking about the Psalm.
Right, the Psalm. So the
that-
Psalm is David's.
David's 25.
Right. So that actually we say quietly when we're bent down, sitting, putting our head on our head, hand or arm. Right.
Do you do that if there's no Aaron where you're davening?
Officially not. Some say you say it without putting the hand on, others don't say it at all. Right. So that is right. So that you're right, because that is technically more tachnun, not just the vidui earlier. But yes, you're right. So there we do say chatis pshai, right? Chatis nu'urai pshai, chatis kardon. Yeah, we're talking about ourselves personally.
First person singular to Hashem.
Right.
Aleinu Shabeach, first person plural to
right.
Hashem.
Right.
And in a very kind of roundabout, we don't call him Hashem, or we don't call him any of the regular names. We call him La'adon HaKol.
Right. Right. So basically,
that's all I want to know. Thank you. That clears it up a lot.
Actually, I see. Let's say, thank you very much. I see. Let's say what we say Monday, Thursday in the V'hurachum. There is a part where we do quote Hatei Elikai Aznachal Shma Pecharef. Open, bend my God your ear. Right. So okay, basically this is what I'm going to say. I think that I didn't go to the whole davening now to check. I think wherever it is in first person singular, it is primarily quotes from verses of Torah. It's not the original liturgy. I think practically all original liturgy, like Ashamnu or the prayers of Shemana Esrei, or the parts of the Emes V'Yatziv, Ezra Tabitenu, everything else is plural.
Shemona Esrei is very pluralized.
Right, because that is original liturgy. However, you are right. When we have in davening quotes of Tehillim or other verses, so then it's phrasing the whatever prophet or writer of that part of giving of Tehillim or of Navi is saying. So we do have insertions in that way of singular, but primarily it is plural. I mean, the reasons for it is there's different reasons for not only the power of the collective, but it's also, let's say, especially in Vidui, famously, that every, regardless of the level of whether we are a tzaddik or not, we're not embarrassing everyone. We're just saying we all are sin. It's not like someone who's could say, oh, maybe I didn't sin. There's a famous story, I think it's from Rav Sadi Gaon, says this also, that by being with others, even though if you think you didn't do anything wrong, but you're saying it with others, and then you're joining in with the collective's form of what is being prayed about. I mean, the number one reason is because it's also a great lesson that in the Jewish way of there is we are not totally individuals. Even when you're davening without a minyan, you're still saying we, not just me.
Yeah, it alludes to the minyan.
Right.
The minyan concept, because you are including yourself in the 10. Therefore, the minyan says Aleinu.
Yeah, but I'm saying, what if you're davening without a minyan? So even so,
Even
I mean,
if
there's teach. That's what I'm saying. That even so, we're being aware that we're not alone, and there is a point that even, and there's actually a Hasidic discourse that says that know that even if you're davening alone, but if there is a minyan somewhere happening at the same time, not even if you're in the same shul with say 770, there's a minyan in the front, you're davening in the back, but even if you're in your own home, and let's say in the shul, this is the same time they're davening. And on a certain level, you are davening with that tzibur, with that collective. That's could be called davening. Then there's the Hasidic interpretation that our 10 sefirot are our internal minyan. So when we daven, when we're saying we're davening with our minyan, we could even when we're davening alone, if we're davening with all of our 10 sefirot fully aligned and fully aware of them, then that could be considered on a spiritual level davening with a minyan. And
speaking
then
on a spiritual level.
Yeah.
Do you know Rabbi Lepkowski from Oakland?
I know of no, I don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's getting late. So let's at least try to.
Thank you very much.
Yes, 100%.
Very much enlightened.
Yes.
And
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
Of course, and yeah, if you have something to share about Rabbi Lepkowski related to this, fine. If it's going to be on, to take a little while. You know what? Let's first finish this, and then we'll have a little more time. Okay. I just don't want to get too distracted. And thank you very, very much for that, Steve. And in fact, we say like Kol Nidre, we say we daven even with the Rishayim of Aryanim. And in fact, there's this teaching that the word Tzibor, which is the daven with the public, the collective, the word Siddur is an acronym for Tzaddik, Beinani, and Rasha. That we're all part of the minyan. Whether we're Tzaddik or Beinani or Rasha, that everyone can join the minyan.
So let me just break in here about everyone joining. I'm just going to sponsor tonight in honor of my daughter's 34th birthday.
Wow, incredible. Mazel tov, mazel tov.
And she has a month-old baby.
Incredible.
She had a boy, and everybody's doing well. So I'm
right. That was the bris that he had. So Mrs. Rebbitzin Leeds.
Not Rebbitzin. No, she's married, so she has Erblich.
Oh, Erblich. Right. Erblich. Oh, that was who it was. Right. Great. And she lives near you, right?
She's in Mitzpeh Ramon.
Mitzpeh Ramon in Israel. I didn't realize that. I thought it was the
middle by the crater, by the Machtesh.
Wow. Amazing. So maybe she made. And what's the name of the newborn?
Karen Netzach.
Karen Netzach. Wow, what a beautiful name. So Mamish.
No, Karen like
with a mem. Right. Oh, with a kaf.
Yeah.
Reish mem. Right. Divine.
Carmel.
Right. Eternal vineyard. Right.
There you go.
Beautiful. So mazel tov to your daughter and to your grandson, and bis 120, as we say, and much nachas and brachas.
Thank you.
Coming down. The shefa coming down. Right. Wow. Coming down to you. Pure as the pure. Givaldi. And so now we're learning. So and this makes the more brings even more intention in our learning now. And so therefore, and even our davening for their well-being and for everyone's well-being. So in this way, so now we're continuing in this way of praying, learning as prep to daven. So now he's giving the positive scenario. Shalom and lishma, if you're learning with the right proper way of intentions, for that to be connected to Hashem and to pray in the best of ways. So then, so just as the way is of your arousal below to rise up, and you're davening, you're learning the right way, and which leads to the best way of davening, also Nishma davening. So too is the response from above, the showering down the masculine words are above with all the good shefa and blessings, etc. But if you learn with not the best, purest of intentions, so too it will affect one's davening. That your davening will also not be with the best of kavanas. Won't be with pure intentions. Meaning you'll have the wrong. You'll have distractions, as we'll see. That's about to say. We'll have the machshavas, the wrong thoughts in your davening. For us, tfilas l'chata, then his prayer is for iniquity, for sin. That's a quote from what we just read from Taylor, that of the evil, wicked people's way of prayer. That their prayer itself is l'chata, is almost like a sin, does wrong. What does that mean? So he has those machshavas, alien thoughts disturb him in his davening. You were learning for, let's say you were learning with ego in mind, without bittul, without surrender. So then you're davening full of ego. Not only you're davening full of ego, then you'll have thoughts coming in your head. What is thoughts coming in your head? Let's say in this concept of having ego, because you are in the way of your davening. Therefore, things that narishkeit that are in your head will pop in and take over your kavanah of davening. So then what happens for us ish? So that is the outer rim, the outer range, right? For us of one's experience of davening, but as ishtai, shehi nefesh, shehi alman. So then there is a disconnect of the nefesh with the ruach. She'enim alubash malbash l'ruach lias naim nefesh. To be the arousal, because then the outer realm of the person, the davener down here, his nefesh, the lower vest container or garment, is not aligned with this inner soul of it, right? You're distracted with your thoughts. So these thoughts are creating separation in the person's nefesh of davening from the ruach. So when there's disconnect of the nefesh ruach, so it's like the wife disconnected from the husband, and i.e. meaning that the wife becomes a widow, not together with the husband. That means the davening is dead. The inner davening is dead. So then, for all intents and purposes, this prayer is like a widow's prayer. Man, it doesn't stop there. Because it's not just the prayer, because just like we said before, that study and also the prayer that follows is to lead to action, meaning that the action is of kind of how you study. So if you're studying right, with the right way, best of ways, intentions, and lishma, so then that will lead to a maisa, your actions, to be also fully in the right, proper way, best of intentions, the positive way. But if you're studying and davening without the best of intentions, the wrong way, so that leads to the wrong types of behavior, actions, right? The gambana, so then as children, the produce, right? Children are like the fruits, the produce, right? Because it's through that learning and prayer that we produce that leads to the action, like we said before. So too, well, if the davening and if the study and davening is not proper, then the outcome of it, which is the action, will be also cut off and almost dead, and it will be disconnected. So the children that will be like orphans. So he says more, like we said before, because the Torah is not only, like we said before, like not only the Torah leads to ma'aseh, to action, but Torah is the double header that has both study and action. Because when you study about an action, then it already includes action in the study. So if your Torah is not in the purest intentions, the Shlei Lishma, so the action part of Torah is already orphaned. It's disconnected. Since it was with first intention, so then hey navinad. So then it's like it's lingering, it's hanging, it's wavering, it's it's not able to fly. Wandering, right? It's not able to rise in flight, right? Prayer is again the idea of ascent, like desire says. It's like a bird with two wings, where it's supposed to fly up, and the two wings are the purest levels of love and awe, avavir. So if you don't have the best avavir and mishma while you're studying or davening, so then even the actions that are in the Torah, etc., are like orphans. Okay, so there, and then he ends off. That is also that you'll have to pay back or take care of the borrower, the creditor will take everything that he has. Because the Yitzhak almost has a technique. He quote unquote lends the person a certain mitzvah or to learn Torah without the purest intentions to God, but rather to brag about, oh, I did a good deed, or oh, I know how to learn so well. So that's that's a more subtle technique of the Yetzer Hara, not that don't do a good deed, not that don't learn Torah, but you know what, Rabbi, learn Torah or do a good deed, but just feel good about it yourself. How that you're such a great person by doing it, or how smart you are by learning Torah. That's why also we say in Dal Chet, and in the whole litany that we say this or that, one of them is the question, what do you mean Yetzer Hara? Everything that you say there is from Yetzer Hara. The answer is no. There's a way you could even be doing a mitzvah, learning Torah, and it's still being led by the Yetzer Hara to build up your ego or just to brag and show off. So in a quote unquote, the Yetzer Hara is even lending off a mitzvah or Torah to the person to use ostensibly for God, but really it's just to create the person's own selfish ego. So when someone studies in such a way, does mitzvah in the way that it's quote unquote lent to him by the Yetzer Hara, for in the with ulterior motive of feeling, bragging about it or whatever. Or so too, you're right. What will be the response from above? The shefa coming down, the mayim from the masculine waters from above, will be rabbeis roitzitzais. Will just be terrible. Will be a lot of tsaris, basically, right? No good will come back. It's a hard nation like and that is how the Yetzer Hara goes, empties out the person's whole credit. He says, so then you get all the bad. Look, you see that it's basically Yetzer Hara gets his way. That he used Torah and mitzvahs in order for the person to fall even to a lower state. And that's the idea, the that the creditor will empty out everything that the person has. May God protect us from this. So here we see already a more subtle form of machshava zara, iniquitous, which is not even if you're having an alien thought, the way we understand fully, but even if you doing it, even if you're davening and you're learning Torah, but you're doing it with not the purest intentions. For example, you feel that while you're davening, you're feeling great about how you're davening. You learn Torah. It's so you could be smart and show off how much you know how to learn, let's say. So what happens? This leads that you will have alien thoughts in your davening and your learning, and that will automatically disconnect oneself from having the pure positive flow coming from above. And for all intents and purposes, your learning and your actions are considered like widows and orphans. Okay, so again, this is not telling us a technique how to deal with the alien thoughts, but it's telling us that alien thoughts is what leads to okay. So here's the part. This is a Torah teaching of what leads to alien thoughts. What leads to alien thoughts is not learning or davening with the purest intentions. then you're setting yourself up to have the alien thoughts, etc., which will cut the positive shefa coming from above. Okay, so that is again. This Torah was again a little bit more like, I was gonna say roundabout in a way. It was more pilpulistic even a little bit, and I felt it was good to learn it because it shows not only just like a short Torah, it shows also, and it's also sort of personifies the Yaakov Yehuda's own methodology of his own Torahs, of bringing different sources and ideas from Tehillim, from Gemara, and concepts that seem like disconnected. What is the story? What does the idea of stunning leads to action have to do with the story of David Achitophel, or how we pray, or and all that, and or the verse in Tehillim about the iniquitous people becoming, having orphans and widows, all that. So you see how it's all connected like a mini topo, but with a teaching. And the teaching is that keep your davening and learning with lishma, with the purest of intentions, and then you will avoid, to begin with, the ability of the Yetzer Hara to bring in illicit thoughts and to distract, because if it does, then it creates the disconnect of the shefa. Either the disconnect of the shefa, you like floating, no, it can't receive, or I don't know if what's better or worse, is that what does come down will be in kind, just like the person was what had not the best in mind while learning Adami. So too, what will be answered from above will also not be the best kind, to put it mildly. Okay, so thank you, Gavald. This also, this also gives us a great awareness of that we should be always try to be our best and do our best, and even like we were learning from the parsha, even if we're not tzaddikim, try to do. Try to serve and be the best, even if it seems like it's not that easy. I would add to this only one more vart, but it's not. It's sort of related and not related. That is, it's almost a refute to what we've just learned now. And that is the Torah that says that that a person should study Shalai Lishma, not for the pure sake, because when you start Shalai Lishma, it will lead to Lishma. All right, and this is even brought down in Halacha and some Gemara. And in the past, we did bring down a Torah too, from the Magid, and I'm sorry, from the Baal Shem Tov and from the Yaakov Yosef on this. And I'll tell you, right, because the question is, why does it say that you should always do so? It's almost something. And even if the teaching is that even if you're not perfect, start learning Torah, even if you have ulterior motives, because once you study Torah, the Torah itself, like the words, the illuminance of Torah itself will lead you to the higher, better, more perfect way. If so, it should have said, even if you learn Shalosh Shema, you should still keep on learning because you will lead. But it doesn't say that. It says always learn Shalosh Shema. Plus two Shalosh Shema. So what's the pshat there? I mean, we did explain it once. Yaakov Yosef says that there's two levels of Torah. That Shalei Lishma means not that, and actually there is also the metaphor of, if you remember, garments, like a husband and the bride and groom, the husband and wife, the wife wearing all the garments, beautification, beautifying with jewelry and attractive clothing. That's the beginning of the relationship with the husband, but the ultimate is to bear the clothing to get to the depth. And in that teaching, Yaakov Yosef says the Shalei Lishma is learning more halacha. That's why the word that means the more exoteric like straight up Gemara parts of Torah. That's why the word of halacha is the same words of hakala, like the bride. But that is the ultimate reason to learn what's known as the nigla, the revealed part of Torah. It's like the outer garments, is in order to get to the inner parts. That is when the kala, the bride, removes her clothing and jewelry to be in pure intimacy with the groom, and that is the lishma, the ultimate. But the only way to get to that state of lishma is through the outer part. And this is another related to what we were learning earlier about the garments. The only way to get to the soul itself, the attribute, the seichel and midas, the 10th spirit of the soul itself, is through the 3 garments of our faculties of thought, speech, and action. And that's why it's so essential that we not try to right away change our very innate inner selves, the seichel and midas and all that, but to first work on our garments and make sure that they are aligned, like we just learned this period, our nefesh garment, ruach neshama garment, and then we can get our. It's almost a bit like the ways that people speak about behavior modification, or what is it? The behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, things like that, which is focused on how we acting, how we're speaking, thought. And once we regulate and we work on that, then automatically, at some point down the line, we can start transforming even our inner selves, even our subconscious, right? If you start right away, start to change the innermost core of our souls, it'll be almost always a fait accompli. We have to deal with the way we know ourselves in the practical realms of our human experience, and only then we'll get to our core. Okay, and again, that's the teaching of why the spies of Moshe did not succeed, whereas the spies of Yeshua did succeed. Okay, all right. So I think that's a wrap. We did go a little bit later this week, and hopefully that was to make up from last week, and which was shorter, and also because we didn't cover Chassidus in a while. So thank you again, everyone who stayed tuned in till now. And Mamish, really, it was really invigorating. And yes, as Steve has in the chat, please Hashem, may all those who need healing be answered for Shlema. Amen. Amen. Thank you, everyone. Chavra, Jonathan says good bench Shabbos. Everyone, Chodesh Tov Mubarak. Yes, unfortunately, everyone who need. Yes, and thank you. Good Shabbos to all. And now we're just going to sing the Shabbos, and yes, Josh, thank you too. And then we're gonna get. We never say goodbye. We just say we're making a pause till next time. Okay. So good Shabbos, Rivka. Shabbos, good Shabbos, Rachel, good Shabbos, good Shabbos, Jonathan, good Shabbos. You know, and also throw in, by the way, to everyone, good Chodesh also. Right, so I get started again. Good Shabbos, good Chodesh, Rivka, good Shabbos, good Chodesh, good Shabbos, good Chodesh, Rachel, good Shabbos, good Chodesh, good Shabbos, good Chodesh, Jonathan, good Shabbos, good Chodesh. Good Shabbos, good Chodesh, Steve. Good Shabbos, good Chodesh. Good Shabbos, good Chodesh, Josh. Good Shabbos, good Chodesh. Good Shabbos, good Chodesh. Everyone in Facebook Land. Good Shabbos, good Chodesh. Good Shabbos, good Chodesh. Everyone in the whole entire world, and all of our families and all our friends, and all those that need all help in Gashmis and Ruchnis and Refuah. Mamish have the highest, holiest, greatest good Shabbos. Then good Chodesh, and may the shlach be also like Kasha, to cast away, send out all the negativity, and letting in only the good. Okay.
Amen.
Amen. All right. So I'm going to go out. We're going to go out of the live stream, Facebook. Goodbye, everyone. Facebook land. Goodbye. Good night. Good morning. If that applies.